from the west coast of Scotland to the west coast of Canada here in British Columbia, we have quite the treat today, at least in my opinion. We're going to be talking all about Ardnamurchan from a very remote peninsula on the west coast of Scotland, the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. The distillery that bears the same name has created quite a buzz and a stir amongst whiskey fans across the globe, all the way over to here on the west coast of British Columbia. So from west coast of British Columbia, we're also going to be jumping over to the Rocky Mountains in Calgary, Alberta, not only for a single cask Ardnamurchan whiskey that we're going to be talking about today, but also for a special guest host. For the first time Whiskey on the West Coast live stream history here, we have a guest host. I'm really excited to introduce him to you guys. But just give you a game plan for the day. We're going to be talking about at least 4, probably closer to 6 or 7 Ardnamurchan expressions here. We're going to be talking about one single cask in particular, the Kensington Wine Market Single Cask, as well as 3 other core range releases, and probably a few others thrown in the mix as well. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome a few of you guys into the chat at the same time as welcoming my co-host here. So actually, I'm going to welcome the co-host first because I think quite a few of you guys know him already. So let's add him to the fray. Welcome, guys. Sheldon from Noteworthy Whiskey on Instagram. He's got some great, fantastic whiskey reviews on Instagram. Love the account. Honestly, way bigger Instagram presence than I do. And you're so on top of actually getting content on every week. I really admire you, and your whiskey notes are fantastic. So Sheldon, welcome here, man.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. That's very high praise. I really appreciate it. Well, as you know, I love your account as well. I've been a fan from very early. Happy to support you on Patreon. I encourage other people to do that as well. Yeah, and actually just this morning I checked and I now have 3,000 followers. So I'm happy that to finally hit that milestone. So yeah,
it's
been going for about a year and a half. Yeah.
That is huge. I don't know how you do it on Instagram. It's quite the I'm riding the struggle bus, so to speak, when it comes to Instagram. But you're just nailing it, man, and bigger and better things for you for sure. 3,000 subscribers on Instagram is a huge feat and a major accomplishment. So well done.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, I feel like you and I are sort of each other's biggest fans because you're always commenting on my posts and saying things. I'm always on your stuff. So it's really great to be here on your channel, and I love everything you do. So happy to be here. Thank you.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for all the support. And honestly, it's just a treat to have someone on, to have some banter. Hopefully we have some good banter here and some good notes back and forth. But yeah, I'm excited for this.
Me too.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you got into whiskey?
Yeah, it's sort of a bit of an up and down. So I had a friend at work who was big into whiskey in sort of the 90s and the 2000s. His favorite was Macallan, and he's like, if you ever get a chance, try the Macallan 15. And I was in Jasper, and at the bar there, they didn't have my room ready, so they're like, hey, go to the bar, you'll get a free drink. I said, okay, I guess Macallan 15. And it was sort of the end of the bottle, and the guy gave me probably 2.5 ounces because it was the end of a bottle. And it was excellent. And obviously it's not the same today of the quality in their bottling, but that one, it would have been sort of like, a bottle from, 2015 or 2014 was very good. And then I sort of got into it a little bit, and I remember buying a Dalmore. It was probably the 12 because I remember looking at me like, oh, it's kind of expensive. And even then it was, I don't know, probably $70 or something. And I remember being disappointed with the Dalmore. I can't tell you why I didn't like it. So that put me off whiskey for a while. And then sort of right before lockdown, I sort of got into gin a little bit. I'm not anymore, but I sort of like bought the Ryan Reynolds gin. And I was trying to see why do people think this is better than others? So I said, well, I'm going to have to probably drink it neat if I'm going to say anything about here, figure anything out about it. So then I sort of started seeing, gin reviews and then whiskey reviews right next to it. And then I sort of saw the documentary, the Bruichladdich documentary, and then bought a Bowmore, bought a Bruichladdich Classic Laddie, and then it was sort of all downhill from there. So, and then
it all came rolling off from there. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting journey to go Mac 15 to Dalmore 12, and we've all been there. Absolutely, I remember buying my one and only bottle of Dalmore.
Yeah.
aviation gin, but then
Yeah,
to see the water. I'm guessing it was the Water of Life film that you watched.
I think so. It was the early one. It was the one.
Oh, Golden Dram,
That's
perhaps.
it. It's like
Yeah,
on Amazon. Yeah, that one.
yeah. Also, great movie. And a lot of people are very familiar with the Water of Life film. I think that was
Yeah.
Greg Schwartz, but
Yes.
a Golden Dram, as long as I'm getting the name right, was a great watch as well.
Yeah, and I remember just saying like, wow, these people are so passionate and invested in a drink that I had before just really sort of mixed with whatever, and just seeing the passion, and there was more to it, and just everything behind it was really attractive, and then obviously, as they said, went down the rabbit hole. As you can see behind me, it's sort of escalated a little bit since buying the Downward 12, but that's always
Yep,
the way it works, doesn't it? But
it is. It is.
yeah, I'm really
Awesome.
happy to be talking about Ardnamurchan today.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's the distillery that's on the tips of all our tongues these days.
Yeah.
There's been some big award wins lately, and we're gonna get to those fairly quickly here.
Yeah.
And it's an enthusiast and a whiskey geek's dream distillery. And
Totally.
I think there's really only things for us to be praising so far, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna welcome a few of the people in the comments section here.
Yeah. Hoping to see some
Gregoire,
familiar faces. Yeah.
Greg checking in from Paris. I'm Matt and Sheldon. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the 4 whiskeys tonight from a great new distillery. Cheers, and good luck to Sheldon for his first live show.
And I think on the topic of Greg, I think he needs a shout out because I think he is a very underrated channel. Like the depth he goes into, the comparisons, the history, it's just like insane the stuff he goes through. Like one of my favorites was the when he's talking about Yoichi and Mikikyo, and there's also a really in-depth one where he compares like 4 generations of Glenlivet 12. When I've got one from the 80s over here, and he compares like 4 of them back to back, and it's insane to see. So if you don't already follow Greg, definitely check his channel out.
Greg's Whiskey Guide. He's also on Instagram, and yeah, fantastic. He's got a lead on a new sherry cask matured whiskey from Isla. So go over to his feed and check that one out. It's definitely a bottle I'm going to be picking up from the Morrison Bowmore Distiller Limited family, Carnmore and Mactala, those bottlings there. So check that out. But yeah, thanks for being here today, Greg. Really excited to have you here. Smear Gel checking in from Finland. Good evening, everybody. Welcome here, buddy. Go ahead too. I think I saw Pete. Pete's checking in for the UK. Welcome here, Pete. Good to see you. All right, Mr. Christensen. Hey ho. Yeah, welcome here. Glad to have you on board. Donner Pass. Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. Saturday morning for me. It's just past 11 a.m. here in British Columbia. I guess it's probably the same for you there too, Donner Pass.
Yeah, it's officially past noon, so I guess it's socially acceptable to now drink, I guess.
Yeah, I'm the lush here, drinking before noon. Greg, with congratulations here for you, Sheldon, on the 3K. Greg, I don't know how you do not have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. If you haven't checked out Greg's YouTube channel, definitely do that, guys. Let's see here. Got Tim Laux. I think you're down in California there, Tim. Greetings, all. Welcome here, buddy. Yeah, some good chat back and forth in the chat here. 8 p.m. in Paris. All right. Well, let's get to our topic here. So today we're going to be talking all about Ardnamurchan. That there is Sheldon's logo there. It's a great logo too, man. It's nice and clean, and it's right to the point. There's whiskey in that glass. There's a pencil and a notebook with notes. Noteworthy whiskey. Love it.
There you go. I always think I should get it redone. Maybe if there's a graphic designer there who could redo it. But yeah, it was made in. Like, I'm no graphic designer and I'm not very techy, but I knew I needed a logo, so that's what it came up with.
Nice. Yeah. So the Ardnamurchan Distillery is located on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula, as we already talked about, on the west coast. It's West Highlands, technically, I guess, is the region, and it's a really remote location for a distillery. The actual road that leads to the distillery is narrow, winding, and bumpy by all accounts I've heard. I believe you can actually access the distillery from a ferry in on the Isle of Mull from Tobermory. I saw some signposts for that and made me want to jump on the ferry and head right over to Ardnamurchan, over to Glenbeg, and find my way to the distillery. However, that is a view of some casks sitting outside the distillery itself. And one of the big things we absolutely have to touch on with the Ardnamurchan Distillery is, even though it was only founded in 2014, it's already won a ton of awards, and in particular from the Enthusiast Whisky Award show, the Online Scotch Whisky Awards, the one that we ourselves actually get a say in, a vote. And so it's won not only 3 times the best new distillery for 2021, 22, and 23. And that's any distillery 10 years or under winning that award. But just this year, it won the big award. It won Best Distillery 2024, which is quite the accomplishment. I don't want to talk too much about hype and buzz, but it's only hype if it's not backed up, I'd say. What are your thoughts on that, Sheldon?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when we were putting together the idea to do this live stream about Ardnamurchan, I sort of looked back through my my collection spreadsheet. Yeah, I'm that sort of collector. I have a spreadsheet of everything I've bought. And the only distillery that I've bought more from is Springbank. I'm not one to really rebuy the same distillery or the same bottle. Obviously, as enthusiasts, we're always chasing something different. So, I mean, Springbank comes ahead because of Hazelburn and Longrow, and you see one, you grab it. But
Yeah.
other than that, Ardnamurchan, the 5 bottles I have here now, plus I picked up the inaugural release when that came out, and reviewed that. So yeah, that's way more than I buy from any other distillery. So I think that just goes to show you that it's not hype. There's some real quality to what they're doing, right? It is different and it's singular, which I think is important.
100%. And just the range of flavors we're getting from Ardnamurchan as well, like the versatility in that distillery. One of the hallmarks for me of a distillery that has the capability of winning best distillery is that ability to present different styles. I know that I believe there was a People's Choice Award for the Bruichladdich distillery in the best distillery category, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to that too, because it has that versatility, that flexibility of doing entirely unpeated, doing peated, doing extremely heavily peated, and then just working with a bunch of different cask types. That's one of the things that I'm seeing from Ardnamurchan. There's much more to that. Obviously, the transparency from the way they're actually going about it from an integrity approach. All these things. I don't know if there's a more transparent distillery out there than Ardnamurchan at this point. But
yeah,
you can have all those essentials, but to actually have that flexibility and approach and presentation, and to be constantly bringing us things that challenge us and make us think. Like, I don't even something that doesn't quite land as being great, like the Ardnagurken, if you've ever run into the gherkin, the almighty gherkin. It's fascinating and it's fun. And I think that's one of the things that whiskey lovers are just globbing onto with Ardnamurchan.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, because like even their Midgie release, right? Like, who names a release after an annoying insect, right? But they had the little cartoon of the little Midgie, and I really wish we could have got that here in Canada, because I would have definitely snagged one of those. You're right. I mean, I don't want to spoil our lineup, but there's a whole range of casks that we're looking at today, and they're all fantastic. And even one that we didn't talk about that I own is the rum cask, which hasn't got quite the love as some of the other ones, but I decided to pick it up because it was a good deal here. But I was thinking about, like, on paper, they should just be a regular distillery, right? They don't use worm tubs. They don't for malt, at least not yet. But like, they use shell and tube condensers. They do everything else the same. So like, what makes them so different, right? Like, what are they doing that's so different and so that catches our attention so much more than the others? So I don't know. I don't know if you have a thought on that, of what magic sauce they bring, but if it's like the warehousing, or is it like just because they're an IB, they come from that independent bottler that they already kind of cater to whiskey geeks? I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's a lot going on the production side and the way they make the whiskey. I think I know a lot of distilleries will talk about water and these sorts of things, and we'll roll our eyes, only using the best, most pure Highland water or something like that.
Right.
But I think there is something to it with Ardnamurchan. I think from the warehouses and the way they're warehousing, the way they're actually selecting their casks, their approach when it comes to blending, the water they are using, even down to the barley, the thought that went into their still. I think we'll touch on all these aspects as we go throughout the stream here. But
Yeah.
I think there's just been so much thought put into every step along the way with Ardnamurchan. I think
Yeah.
it's just the accumulation of those things.
Right.
It's not just focusing all on the best quality sherry casks from a particular triangle in Spain. It really is a culmination of all the parts.
Yeah.
Checking in with the chat a little bit here. We got Tim saying that it's too early for him to start drinking. I appreciate that, Tim. Perhaps we'll join either with the Ardnamurchan or the AD sherry in a bit. Great choices. Ardnamurchan has had a bunch of positive reviews that I've seen, and we will be dramming along with the AD sherry close to the end ourselves. So I think those are great choices there, Tim. And let's see here. Talking about awards, Gregoire saying, yep, Matt, it's true. I'm afraid they're going to get an award from me too this year. Oh, a bit of a spoiler there. Absolutely. Pete's pouring a single cask, it sounds like. Just poured a favorite of mine of theirs at the moment. Oloroso Octave 1144 made with Golden Promise barley.
I was gonna mention the Golden Promise that they're using some heritage blends or heritage grains, that there was a single cask released in the UK that was a Golden Promise, and that is like has me. You were talking about FOMO in your last Instagram post. I'm like, oh man, I almost want to pay the $100 for shipping from from the UK.
If only it was easier, we'd have no money at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that sounds beautiful, Pete. That's a great bottle to be dramming along with here. And Greg, 4 Ardnamurchan bottles in his collection as compared to yours there, Sheldon, for now. Yeah, that's exactly the point for now. I feel like it's going to be growing on people's shelves all around the globe. Still a decent number for a new distillery. Yeah, again, under 10 years old, like 2014 to 2024. It's quite incredible.
Well, and they didn't wait till it was just 3 years to release it either, right? I think the inaugural was like 5 or 6, if I'm not mistaken. Like it wasn't like out the door 3 years in a day, right?
I think there's a lot of distilleries that can learn from that. I mean, we've seen that pivot from Isle of Harris with the Herak. I believe it was closer to 5 years old. The Ardnaho release, 5 years old. I think and obviously the granddaddy of them all when it comes to the most recent distilleries, Daft Mill, wait until they had 12-year-old whiskey to bottle there. I think it's a smart choice. Wait till your product is ready. It doesn't have to be a 10 or a 12-year-old, but wait till it's ready.
Yeah, totally. That's another topic for a live stream. We could do a Daft Mill rundown.
Oh my gosh. Daft Mill, that would be a beautiful. I'd be very happy. Smear gel, what I also like about Ardnamurchan is the QR tracking feature they have on the bottles. Yeah, I'm sure most of us here are aware, but if I can get this to focus, on the back of the bottles, you get these QR codes that will tell you just about every detail you ever would want to know about the bottle that's in your hand. And so actually, what I'll do now is I'll maybe introduce this single cask and we'll get to our lineup, because this is what really inspired us to get on a live stream together and talk about Ardnamurchan, is the fact that we have this local store, probably the best store in, actually, I'm just going to say the best store in Canada at this time when it comes to whiskey is Kensington Wine Market. Andrew Ferguson and his whole group of staff there, Evan, Kurt, Harmony, Sammy, everyone else, Sean. I'm leaving people out. This is a Joshua Hatton incomplete list if you ever listen to Single Cask Nation, but really they do an incredible job, and their single cask picks are known across the country, if not around the world, as being quite wonderful. I've never had a miss with them. And so they brought in this brand new Ardnamurchan single cask for Kensington Wine Market. Now, we would start off with this bottle. However, it's peated. It's peated to about 30 ppm. And as such, we'd like to drink through a few other Ardnamurchans before getting to that one. So that is really the impetus for us jumping on this. We both had access to this bottle. We're both very excited about a new Ardnamurchan single cask. This one's first fill ex-bourbon, about 7 years old. We are very excited, and we've waited all this time to crack it live on the live stream, which is exactly what we're going to do once we get through 3 other pours 3 other pours. And we're going to be starting with, I'll get this teed up on our PowerPoint here. We're going to be starting with quite a lovely bottle here, actually. I only just opened mine about, actually this week. We're going to be starting with the Ardnamurchan Paul Launois 2024 release. Now, this whiskey has been recently reviewed, by my knowledge, by Gregoire over in Paris. At least he opened it and offered us some tasting notes. If I remember correctly, Gregoire, you were quite impressed by this. And Sheldon, you posted on Noteworthy Whiskey on Instagram about this bottle. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to snag it. I've been looking around Calgary and even up in Edmonton at every shop I could go into that I thought would sell, and not mass market stuff, and look for the 2023 release, but it was just nowhere to be found. So when this came up for pre-order, I had to go for it. So I was really, really happy to get it.
And where did you get this bottle? Pray tell.
Oh, Kensington Wine Market. The Kensington Wine Market is about 5 minutes down the road from my office. So that's dangerous game that I play at lunchtime sometimes. Go down there and see what they have available. My coworker's like, "You're going there again?" Like, my God. But it's just an unreal store. Like, their whiskey wall is insane. Like, you can't even take a picture of it from one side to the other. You had to take like a panorama to get it all. And the staff there really are whiskey geeks, and you can trust their recommendations. I've gone with a friend and like, "Hey, how about this?" They're like, "Nah, don't buy that. Like, that's not very good. Get this instead." Like, they'll tell you what they like and what they don't like, and that really builds your confidence that they're not gonna sell you something they don't stand behind. So, and I think I want to shout out Andrew's tasting notes too, because they are awesome. They're always really good. Such an inspiration.
Idiosyncratic tasting notes. Yeah. They're fantastic. I always look forward to them. Whenever Andrew has tasting notes up on one of the whiskeys on the website, I always pay attention to read through them.
This wasn't on purpose, but I got my Kensington Wine Market Glencairn from the calendar I did one year. Yeah.
It's kismet. I've got actually a KWM Capita over here as I'm dramming on a little bit of Aquavite's Blue Barfly bottle. It was kind of wetting the palate, just kind of using that as a warm-up dram.
I'm jealous of that. Yeah. Was that the lighter colored one or the darker color? You said blue, right? That was the...
Yeah, that's the darker colored one here.
Yeah,
I'll really show that on the screen too, and then we'll get back to the Paul Launois.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed I didn't get that one. I sort of hemmed and hawed and then didn't go for it. And then I saw it on auction, and then I couldn't bring myself to buy it on auction, so...
That's the Blue Barfly bottle right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I love this fill level indicator on the side there. So I'm just touching the top of that indicator level now. But it was a really cool project that Roy did with 2 refill casks and just showing the difference of, well, yeah, it's labeled a refill cask, but refill what? And this one was what I'm guessing was a refill sherry cask of some sort. Yeah, really wonderful, like autumnal dram, like really great for fall. Really great one for fall.
Yeah, now, this is one of the only bottles where my wife was like, "Hey, that is a good looking bottle." Like, this the matte blue and the gold really stands out. And this being a hydrometer is really neat too, right? Like, the level. Yeah, just a little touch to it.
It's the forethought into every decision that they make. It's really just it's really just well thought. And Kyla had the same thing. She took a picture for me the other day of the KWM bottle, and she's like, "That's a good looking bottle."
That's right.
Damn rights it is. Damn rights it is. So turn into the Paul Launois bottling here. This is what you will get, a small snippet of what you'll get if you scan that QR code that's on the back of the bottle. So there's the bottle there, AD Paul Launois release. This is the 2024. My bottle on my table is number 298 out of 3,198 bottles. I'm all right with a 298 bottle. That's pretty cool. This is the geeky, nerdy detail it gets down. It tells you exactly who bottled it for you. So thank you, Kelly, Holly, and Reese, for all the work you do at the Ardnamurchan Distillery. We're appreciating it, because if you weren't bottling it, we wouldn't have it in our glass on our tables today. So thank you.
On that point, real quick, I know that they have hired, I don't know about everybody, but a good chunk of the people who work at the distillery have no previous distilling experience. like they were like a bus driver, or they were working here, working there. Like they really, like that's a cool thing. Like to me, whiskey's always sort of been like a working man's, working class sort of drink, and they're like embodying that with who they have making it, right?
100%. I mean, employing locals with well-paying jobs in a place as remote as the Ardnamurchan Peninsula, that's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal here in Canada. You know, we have quite a rural versus urban divide, and jobs in rural areas are hard to come by and are incredibly valuable and important. And so when you have job creation at a place like Ardnamurchan, where they're actually creating really wonderful jobs for people, yeah, you're hiring the locals. That's the way it should be done, and you get them the training they need to kind of get on board and really excel in what they're doing. So I love that. I think, I mean, I should probably not take a guess here. I for some reason I think the person who runs their stills used to be a bus driver. That
Maybe
feels like an anecdote, but yeah, it's fantastic. I really appreciate that about them. Moving on, the barley. So in this Paul Lamois, it's Concerto barley from Broomhall Farms. Broomhall Farms are in West Fife. You will notice a lot of the Ardnamurchan barley comes from these particular farms. I'm not sure if all of it does, and it gets malted at Baird's Maltings. So Baird's is very commonly used as a malting house for a number of different suppliers across both, I mean, North America. I mean, a lot of the peated malt that comes for Canadian single malt peated releases comes from Baird's or Crisps or others. But yeah, not surprised to see that there. But we know the barley's coming from Fife, much like the barley for Daft Mill, different farms, but similarly there.
Yeah.
Mashing, there was 3 waters. There's always 3 waters. With the mashing process, you know, they're trying to extract all those lovely sugars from the barley grist itself. First water, second water, and third water. You can see the temperatures going up there, but this is the nerdy detail we get, is even the temperature of the water that they're using to extract those sugars. Now, the third water, to my understanding, is actually just used as the starting water for the next batch's first water. So that's a really interesting process there as well. Average hours of fermentation, 76 hours. And the reason why they're talking average hours is because it can vary quite a bit, because they will ferment over the weekend. If they have something that's partway through on the Friday and they don't work on the weekends, their schedules are Monday to Friday, they will leave it in the washbacks over the weekend. And so you can have some releases that have an extra, say, 48 hours or so of fermentation on them. This one, very typical fermentation time, 76 hours on average. Distillation, you can see that the min-max there where they cut on the still, where they pulled the whiskey from, 64.7% to 73.5%. When they do fill the casks themselves, they dilute the spirit down to 63.5% ABV. This is a common practice across the industry. Not every distillery does it. I think one of the distilleries that doesn't always do it is Highland Park, which is why we see so many Highland Park single casks with astronomical ABVs. However, Ardnamurchan is diluting it down to 63.5% to actually go in the casks.
Another one that doesn't always do that, oh, sorry to interrupt, is Bunnahabhain. Because it seems like to me, you get like a 20-something Bunnahabhain, it's still like 58%. You're like, how does that work?
Yeah, no, exactly. You know, there are a number of distilleries doing it, and I do wonder what their thought on the process is. We'll talk a bit more about that, because that comes down to the water they're using too. And one of the things that I've heard referenced over and over again as being one of Ardnamurchan's strengths. And then finally, for maturation on this Paul Lamois, and we'll get to the whiskey and what we're getting out of it here. These are the casks that went into it. And so it's entirely unpeated spirit from 2017, bottled in 2024. So it's in and around 7 years old. We can see there's a number of runs of casks here, but American standard barrels. And then the Paul Lamois, it actually goes ahead and it will tell you the toasting levels, the light, medium, strong, or just straight up ex-bourbon casks. My understanding is it's about a 1 year Paul Lamois finishing time on these releases. So very interesting composition for this whiskey. I don't know of any other whiskey that's working with champagne casks regularly. These are Chardonnay wine champagne casks. I know that Loch Lomond plays with like champagne yeast varietals and stuff like that. But actual champagne casks, that's new to me. Do you know of anyone else that does that, Sheldon?
The only maybe Bruichladdich?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe.
they love their wine casks.
They do. They definitely love their wine casks, that's for sure. It is a bit unusual too to put the actual name of the winery on the bottle, right? Because a lot of them don't do that, even with sherry and stuff. It's like, if you go to the
Yeah.
distillery and look at the cask or ask, they'll tell you, but it's like, oh, we have these agreements we can't really say. But that's interesting that they have that relationship.
All right. So looking at the nose on this Ardnamurchan.
Oh boy, for me,
Ooh,
it's like cake, like sponge cakey,
I could
like
definitely see sponge cake.
dense sponge cake. That kind of cake that has like the sliced fruit on top, like the slices of nectarine and peach and that kind of thing.
Yep.
But it
Certainly
is,
honeyed. Certainly
yeah,
honeyed, like I'm almost thinking of like honeycomb
yeah,
and a nice bright, somewhat zesty orange note for me as well. Like,
yeah. I definitely got sort of in that like a orange spice cake or orange coffee cake, that sort of idea. Sort of like that.
completely.
One thing that I noted that I think is a good note is peaches and cream instant oatmeal. Like the little packs you put in the microwave and
I love that.
peaches and cream.
I
Yeah,
can totally see that. Like you're getting that grain note
yeah,
along with that fruitiness. Definitely stone fruits. There's
yeah.
a bit of a creaminess on the nose as well to me, and it reminds me. Whenever I get like creamy fruits, either along strawberry or peaches, I think of those Campino candies. Those like ones that
Right.
have like the swirl of color.
They're like vanilla and strawberry or vanilla and whatever, right? They're kind of swirled creamy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What about this is obviously I think just an exclusive Canadian thing, but what about Orange Julius?
Orange Julius at the mall. Yeah, I could see that. A lot of these sort of bright, fruity, um, I don't want to say effervescent because that's playing so much into that like champagne idea as opposed to what's necessarily there. But it's bright, but it has
Mm-hmm.
this nice malt
Yeah,
backbone to it, which really is holding the structure all together. You're getting those dessert tones. You're getting that like almost sponge toffee or toffee cake, as you said,
yeah,
note there. Those that bright orange, the peach, and those cream notes too. Yeah, really
yeah.
engaging nose. Beautiful nose.
Oh yeah, just jumps out of the glass too, like very vivid. Like you don't have to really search that hard; it just sort of jumps out of the glass, right?
Yeah. Checking into a comment here, Donner Pass. I think a lot of the smaller remote ones always have longer weekend fermentation that gets mixed into everything as a matter of routine. I think that's a good call. I think a lot of them do that, and we rarely see something that becomes a single cask with a longer fermentation because it all gets averaged out for the most part. But yeah, I think that's a good call. These more remote distilleries, they're definitely more prone to it because they don't have the same sort of round the clock work schedules. And Greg, just another quick comment here. First one who did champagne casks in history was Aaron, in his recollection, around 2005, if not mistaken. And it was nice in his memory.
There you go.
Oh, the longer this sits in the glass, Sheldon, and it's becoming more vibrant for me.
What I'm getting now, sort of like a German, like a malty. How they're sort of orangey almost, like those kind of malty beers. Sort of.
Yeah. Actually, you brought up beer. It's making me think of like a Belgian wit. Like there's
There you go.
a
Yeah.
very distant like little touch of spice that if I really wanted to buy into the Belgian wood idea, it would be like a bit of coriander and that orange along with the malt notes in behind. Yeah, I'm picking up like a Belgian wit style on the nose. That's really
Yeah.
cool. All right, I'm going to take a sip here, buddy. Thank you for joining me. Slunch.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. Cheers. Not much heat for, what is it, 57 or something like that?
57.3, which is pretty close to uh, British Imperial proof, I'm pretty sure. If not dead
Yeah,
on. Is it 57.1 or 57.3?
I think it's one. I think it's
One. Okay.
57.1. I think.
Pretty dang
And one thing I
close.
found with this too is when I was exploring over the past 2 weeks or so is you just can't drown it. You can add so much water to it and it just keeps on going.
Oh boy. That first sip was beautiful. I was actually just focusing on enjoying it. A bit more about this bottle here. 57.3% ABV. It's non-chill filtered. It's natural color. I didn't mention that earlier because I feel like that goes without saying with Ardnamurchan, but I should mention it because it is something that they are doing right in the process. They are treating the whiskey with respect, and they're treating consumers with respect by not dumbing it down and proofing it down to the floor. So thank you to
Yeah.
Ardnamurchan for that, and I think they're having a lot of sustained success in part due to this.
Oh yeah, I mean, just integrity all the way through, like the transparency. Like you said, bottling nothing below, what's their normal strength? 46.8 or something like that is their number, right? For their standard stuff. So, I mean, it just is so much more. Obviously, everyone here agrees, that with that you get so much more engagement, and it's just nothing like, when you go to something that's 40% or 43, you're like, no, where'd it
Yeah.
go? Where is it?
It's just, why is this so uninteresting?
That's right.
Okay. Should focus on some notes on the palate here. I'm just enjoying talking and drinking this whiskey.
From me right out the gate, it's like sort of a cantaloupe-y, melony sort of idea.
I'm getting a certain mineralic quality that I get with almost all Ardnamurchan. So there's a bit of chalkiness to it for me, which I love. I love getting that that kind of feeling to the whiskey. But grapefruit, like served with, what would give grapefruit some spicing and a bit of like structure on top of it. Grapefruit's the first fruit that jumped on me. In my mind, I'm always trying to go through a tasting wheel. I'm like, okay,
Right.
like, is this earthy? Is this fruity? Is this malty? Is this rich? Like, where am I going? Savory. And so I start with the fruits, and so grapefruit was the first fruit that jumped out to me on the palate.
For me, I sort of got, and it's not quite fair because you've had your bottle for like a week and I've had mine for more than 2. So it's not quite fair that I've had all this time to prepare. But if you've ever had spiced mangoes, like they come in like, they're like dehydrated. They come in a little pack. My wife buys them from like Trader Joe's, and they're like kind of spiced mangoes.
Spicy mangoes, I like that because there is this lovely. I mean, I'm guessing it's coming from the oak cast. This spice,
Yeah.
or, it's a really pleasant. And again, it almost feels bubbly. Like I've drank some soda water. I drink a lot of like soda water, mineral water.
Right.
I got addicted to it when I was going to school in Germany.
Right.
It was like you had to ask for still water. You otherwise you got mineral water, sparkling water, and it just gives me that feeling on my tongue of that, but in such a pleasant, fruity and rich way. I'm loving this.
Yeah.
It's a
And
type of
for
jam
me,
that just
go ahead.
invites another sip. I think that's why I'm going back for another sip
Funny
so
good.
often, because when I finish that sip, it's not that the finish is short by any means,
Yeah.
but it just makes me go, I want to experience that again.
Right. No, and that mineral note is right on the money. And I get that in every Ardnamurchan I've had, but for me, it shows up sort of in the late palate or finish, sort of like Rockets candy or those bottle caps. I don't know if you remember bottle caps in sort of those long packs. I don't know if they're around anymore, but that's sort of where it shows up to me.
Lemon sherbet on the finish to start for me. Going into that lovely, ooh, I like that oak spice on the back end there too. Almost, it's not going towards cinnamon, more of a nutmeg for me. But backing up to your notes there, that's always the comparable for me is the Rockets candies, and the Canadian Rockets, not the American ones, the ones that are like little chalk candies wrapped up in little plastic wrappers and bottle caps. I absolutely remember bottle caps, those little fizzy chalky candies. Those are great. I might have to go find a pack of those for later.
Go find a pack of them. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I do get a bit of that effervescence on the palate. I don't know if you do. Sort of that. I
Yep,
always like in my notes you'll see it like prosecco, like a fruit flavored sparkling wine. Like that's sort of how it presents to me. Like
I'm
again, I
trying.
think mango, nectarine, peach, something.
It feels like I'm trying to avoid the effervescent comparison because of the subliminal messaging.
Right.
Thinking about champagne casks, but it
Yeah.
really has that impact, and that's why I'm getting that like that soda water sort of like popping fizzy
Yeah.
sort of feel. Uh,
No, I'm with you, and that's one of the things that first attracted me to whiskey because I got that on the classic laddie. It was sort of that bubbly effervescence, and I was like, "Wow, this is something totally different." So when I find that in whiskey, I definitely like it. Um, on the palate, I'm sort of getting a little bit of that bready again, like sort of bread pudding. I don't know if you've ever been in the States to a Texas Roadhouse.
I have not.
No,
No.
so we were in Florida and they have them there. It's barbecue like that is not really my place, but they had these wonderful sweet buns, and they came with like a real creamy vanilla cinnamon spread you put on them, and that's sort of what it is on the palate for me.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
I think you're going down the right road there um with the pastry angle there too. Like if there was like a really nice like breakfast or like morning bun, that sort of pastry, I'm picking up on that a bit too. And I think if I'm not mistaken, Greg's been giving us some of his tasting
Oh.
notes in the chat here as well. That feeling of unspicy Kleinleash, um, which I have to look for that waxy note in this on my next sip and see if like because I always think of waxiness along with some orchard fruits and maybe just like a tusk of like rustic Highland in my Kleinleash. But yeah, I'll go back to that and give that a try. Mango and melon, maybe. Yeah, yeah. So those spicy mangoes you were talking about, Sheldon.
Yeah.
And has a pastry side for me that Paul Amour very Moorish. And
Mm.
sorry, a French reference. Mille. Oh, I'm sorry, my French is not good enough this morning to take a crack at that. But thousand foil in English. I wish you could try one. Come to Paris one day. One day I'll be back in the beautiful Paris there, Greg.
I've got a
And
layover in Paris, but I don't think we'll have time to meet up. I don't know, it's 7 hours or something, but I don't know if that's enough time, Greg.
I mean, Charles de Gaulle is. I feel like he can manage it on the. Was it the RER, the train there? But yeah, no, it's a lot of work. But man, I enjoyed my time in Paris. I do hope to get back. Usually, when I fly into Europe, I do fly into either
Yeah.
Paris or Frankfurt.
Yeah, I did like looking for the waxy. I did note kind of honeycomb on the palate,
Hmm.
even like sort of like the inside of a coconut, like the flesh of a coconut. That's sort of like chewy, waxy, sort of coconut feeling, but also the flavor of it.
Absolutely, and on the back end of the palate, towards the start of the finish, I'm
Mm-hmm.
also finding that waxy element there too. So yeah, I think that's a great call by Greg.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Very impressed with the Paul Lanois. I did try the 2023 at the Victoria Whiskey Festival,
Okay.
and I do have to say, I was in the second room of the grand tasting at the end of a very long day of tasting a lot of enormous whiskeys,
Right.
and I may have been out of past the limit, so to speak, with my palate, and I wasn't overly impressed with the 2023 in that moment. And I put that down to the palate. And so I kind of slept on the 2024 Paul Lanois at
Mhm.
first and said, I'll think about picking up a bottle. And I really have to say it was posts like yours, Sheldon. It was posts like Greg's. It made me go, all right, that bottle has to come home with me.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it did because obviously we have it here to discuss on this live stream, and it is delicious. It's really a lovely whiskey here, and I think this bottle's already the level's dropping very quickly for a bottle I only got this week.
Same here.
So I think
Yeah.
that says a lot. I think that's a yeah.
Oops.
I think that says an awful lot about just how enjoyable and just how drinkable this Paul Lanois release is.
And it was a very good price too. I think it was 140 ish, maybe a little bit less,
I
120.
think it was Yeah, it was like in the 130 range. It was really, really reasonable. 130, 135. I've
Yeah,
seen some other stores mark the Paul Lanois up. So I'm really glad that they kept this at a reasonable price.
yeah, it's really good.
All right, next up, we're going to be moving on to a bottle I don't actually own, and I only have a sample of thanks to Sheldon here.
It came
It's
from
going
this
to
one.
be, yes, that one right there. It's going to be the Ardnamurchan AD 1022 Madeira cask. So I'm just going to refer to this as the Madeira cask going forward here. I'm glad that they changed a little bit of how they do the labeling. The AD sherry cask for each year is a lot cleaner. So yeah, AD Madeira cask, maybe that's how I'll refer to it. It's 58.2% ABV. And we'll get to some information about it here. It's 5 years, first filled bourbon casks, followed by a year-long finish in Madeira hogsheads. It was a release of 5,781 bottles, bottled without added color, chill filtration, and bottled at 58.2% ABV. Here's some of the whiskey-based info on it. I have the whiskey-based information up here because I do not own this bottle, as I mentioned, which means I don't have the QR code to show you all the geeky, nerdy information on it. But I think you guys get the idea with the geeky, nerdy, wonderful, fully transparent information that Ardnamurchan provides us. This whiskey is it's a I'm really excited to get to try it. I have not had this one yet. So this is going to be something that I have a lot of fun. And thank you for the sample, Sheldon. I got to get this in my glass here.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I was happy to be able to share it with you because I think I got the last bottle in all of Calgary. Because again, I'd heard about it, heard people rave about it, looked around nowhere. I go into Co-op World of Whiskey and there was one sitting there, so I had to get it. And I think that was the only one because they're nowhere now.
Pete, thanks for dropping in, buddy. Always love hearing you and seeing you in the chat. And thanks for all the support, my friend. I hope you have something good in your glass later tonight. And yeah, I appreciate you catching up later. Take care, buddy. Have a great weekend.
Make sure no one can see my horrendous writing on the label there. My chicken scratch.
you know, it's better than mine, and mine goes to court often. So I think it'll do. I think it'll do.
For my job, I had to switch to type notes because nobody could read them. So I had to switch to typing everything out.
Sugar Kitty's checking in here with a meow. Meow to you too. All right, this is way too early to know because I literally just poured this in here. But how long have you had this bottle open for?
Quite a while. I do keep track of that because I'm a huge nerd. It's been a while. If I can find it while we're talking here. I bought it quite a while ago.
I'm gonna say right away, like there's no heat coming off this nose. None.
That's true. Yeah.
Like it feels like it's either been open for at least a good little bit here, or it's just.
I bought it October 2023, and I opened it March 1st of this year. So it has been open a while.
I mean, oh man, okay.
You know what I get is like berry fruit leather.
I like the fruit leather note. There is a more. There's a deeper fruitiness to this than the Paul Lanois. The Paul Lanois was all very bright.
Yes.
There's something darker and deeper, and I'm not going to say richer yet, but it feels heavier, the fruit notes.
Totally. And I get sort of a molasses kind of note, but it reminds me of, do you remember, I think you and I are of a similar vintage, those Halloween candies that kind of came in wrapped in wax paper and they were sort of like yellowy and they were kind of Halloween kisses or something they called them.
Oh, I do not remember those. No.
Yeah, that kind of what reminds me of on the nose.
Yeah, there's like a almost like a saltwater toffee sort of note
Yeah.
on the nose for me. And
Yeah,
haven't been to Bowen Island recently. They've got saltwater taffy makers there right on the ocean, and they got all these different flavors of going with it too. And so if I was to assign something, there's like if it exists, a rum raisin saltwater taffy.
right. Yeah. I put sticky toffee pudding, so that's close. Rum
That's
raisin, toffee pudding, right, kind of thing.
that's there's something sticky,
Yeah.
fruity, and overall just like beckoning me to take a dram here. This is yeah, I got to take a sip of this.
Again, not pretty gentle for the ABV, right?
Mm-hmm. There's a nice dessert spicing with a little bit of pepperiness just on the outside.
Right.
And that, I think sticky toffee pudding is a really good comparison there. Fruit cake, I'd say, honestly, like a really booze soaked, like rum soaked fruit cake.
Your note of peppery dessert, I put strawberries with pepper on them. I don't know if you've ever eaten that before, like where they cut up strawberries, you put pepper on top. And that's what it reminds me of. There's also on the palate anyway, sort of like a minty, gingery, herbal tea sort of thing.
Definitely going towards a tea note. Far too often do I go to orange pico, but
yeah,
I'm getting that fruitiness with this sort of tea note, almost like a breakfast tea. I would say that there is a certain richness to this and firmness in the palate that I could sit with this dram a bit longer, I think, than the Paul Lanois. Just in that, I think there's a bit more complexity in the palate. There's a bit more to pick through for me.
Oh, and with a bit of water, maple pancakes.
There it is.
Yeah. And I think maple is sort of an overused note. I see that a lot, but to Canadians, maple is a very specific thing. It's not sugary syrup. It's not. It's maple is maple, right?
Yeah, 100%. And if you're talking maple candies versus maple syrup, there's a difference there too.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, this Madeira cask is really, really, really nice, buddy. Oh my word.
If you saw my shortlist whiskey of the year video that I posted yesterday, this is on it. This is top 5.
Yeah, I did. I love that post. You know, you had, not to spoil it all, but you had a few bottles in there that I have on my shelf and a few that I don't.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that I don't is this Madeira cask.
Yeah.
I did like the inclusion of the Daftmill 15 cask strength on that list. I think we both picked up backups of that, did we not?
Yeah, I did. It's so crazy, speaking of Daftmill, that people in Europe are just going to go crazy because there's currently cases of Daftmill at Kensington Wine Market just sitting there. And a few weeks ago, they went on sale for about 160 Canadian for the
160 for the winter. For the winter batch, the standard, and I think the cask strength was down to like 224 for the 15 cask
That's
strength.
when I snagged it because I bought it when it was 280 when it first came out. I'm like, I can't, because they had a single cask and I missed out on it. And I'm like, I cannot miss out on it. So I got one, realized how amazing it was, and then when it was on sale a little bit, I picked one up because
I'm not one of these people. I'm not one of these people that believes in single cask supremacy, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like single casks aren't always better than the vatted product. They just aren't, because I believe there's a lot of skill in what blenders can do, and I think you can see that with Ardnamurchan. However, the single cask Daftmill that KWM had is by far my favorite Daftmill I've ever had. It's I don't like saying that, hearing that you missed out on a bottle, but when I crack mine, I'll make sure to send a sample your way, because I've had
I appreciate that.
2 or 3 drams off of that, and I remember them all starkly. It's just one of those drams.
speaking, we were talking about Ardnamurchan being singular, having a singular identity. Daft Mill certainly does as well. It just is like nothing else, right? You get
Checking in.
Sorry.
Go for it.
Waffle cones.
Oh yes. I'm actually right now. I know exactly where I'm standing, and that's an ice cream shop on the Vedder River here called Banter Ice Cream.
There you go.
Where they're pressing waffle cones all day. I'm waiting in line.
There you go.
And that's what I'm smelling. Absolutely. Checking in with the chat here a little bit. Cliff Lowy, welcome here, Cliff. Bishop Cellar has a bottle of the AD stuff, 46.8%. So that's going to be their AD release, their core AD release. And I'll be speaking a little bit about that AD release because I love that bottle quite a bit. I think it gets overlooked for all these special releases quite often, but I think there's some key things they've done with that bottle. And if you haven't picked up a bottle of Ardnamurchan AD, if you haven't had Ardnamurchan yet, that is absolutely 100% full stop the place to start, in my opinion. So if that's the Ardnamurchan that's available near you there, Cliff, in Halifax, good to have someone checking in from Nova Scotia, being from Cape Breton Island originally myself. Buddy, welcome here. That said, the AD release is great. Greg in Paris, love Madeira casks. So pissed off they didn't sell it here. You know, I have not had a bad Madeira cask whiskey yet myself there, Sheldon. I know Ralphie said something kind of along the same lines on some of his videos in the past reviewing Madeira casks.
Yeah.
What's your experience with Madeira?
Yeah, the same. I think what his point was is that they're casks that aren't prepared for seasoning, right? They're actual used for wine. And I think that was his main point in that. But yeah, this is just blueberry muffin, red currant, just really, really good. And when you adding the water, you know, sometimes if you add water, I'm a big proponent of adding water. Everything gets added water to it, or almost everything. Yep. But sometimes you add water to it, the palate stretches out, gets nice and more development, easier to understand, but then the nose gets flattened. This, though, everything gets better with 2 little drops of, I mean, I don't have very much in this, obviously, but 2 little drops of water, and it just sings.
I oftentimes, too, find adding water, just it creams up the palate, too. Like, the viscosity will oftentimes counter to what you might think. I find it oftentimes becomes much more viscous when you have that interplay with the water. Yeah,
I noted that on the Launois, which is weird. You're right, because you think you dilute it, you think it's going to get more watery, but it just sort of, I don't know the science behind it, but it does. You're right.
Smear Gel bought a Long Row 18 2024 batch. As I heard, it's probably the last one for a while, and they're running low in stock. That's what I've heard too. There, Smear Gel, that the Long Row 18 and 21s, I believe, were the ones being discontinued for a few years while they catch up on their stocks. Glad you grabbed that bottle, buddy. That's I have one Long Row 18 on my shelf here from a few years back, and it's not something that's easily replaceable for me. And I imagine most of us are in that boat. It's one of those bottles that you kind of grab when you can. So yeah, glad you grabbed a bottle of that, buddy. And let's see here. The Ardnamurchan bottle is Madeira and sherry. That rings a bell to me as well there, Tim. And that's why I'd love to get my hands on a bottle of that after trying this, because I have had the sherry cask release. Now I have this Madeira in my glass, and I mean, I don't see how great plus great couldn't equal amazing in this case. Ooh. Yeah, that the maple note is coming through.
You got what, maple donut? On the end of the palate, I sort of get like a cola, Dr. Peppery sort of.
That like almost like amaretto type note, like
Amaretto's a good call. Yeah, amaretto's a good call.
Yeah, I get that for sure as well. Have you ever made a Godfather out of curiosity?
No. What is it?
It's a cocktail. Just it's Scotch and it's amaretto, and I can't remember the parts, over ice. And to me, it tastes like Dr. Pepper. personally. And sometimes when I get that amaretto note in whiskey, it brings me back to drinking Godfathers in university.
Better than Jack and Coke.
Yeah, yeah. Same results though when you're in university.
I suppose.
Oh man. That is that's a delicious dram.
Well, I made
Dang.
sure to give you a full bottle of it, or a full sample bottle of it.
Yeah, you weren't stingy at all there, buddy. That's beautiful. I'm going to make sure to enjoy this, and I'll eventually get to a proper review on the channel. We were talking about adding water to whiskey, and whenever I'm writing out notes, I always get the water dropper out and add water to it. But early on, I think I tried to record a video while adding water, and it inflated the video from about like 12 to 15 minutes to like 25 to 30. I'm like, I can't keep doing this. But with my videos, I always have, at least a few notes, like some background stuff. I always have a few notes off to the side because, I pick up the most when I can put pen to paper, much like I imagine you do. When I actually pull up pen to paper and I can start writing it out, that's when I really get to what I'm thinking about a dram. And that's honestly, it's intimidating for me trying things on a live stream because it's on the spot in the moment. What's coming to you, and I really lean on that pen and paper. I'm not sure if you're the same way, but that's when I add water and I really play around with it.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Like if you're just sort of relaxing and doing something else, it's hard, but you're right. When you put your mind to it and focus and actually do that purposefully, then it all kind of comes a little bit more clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find sometimes too, if you add water, if you don't give it a couple minutes to sit, it sort of agitates it a little bit. Like it gets a little bit spicier, a little hotter. So I always sort of add it and then give it a couple minutes to sit.
It'll become more cohesive again.
Right.
I mean, we love that about bottlers like Thompson Brothers, where they're actually, giving time for their blends to marry in a vat. It's so important to actually having a cohesive product and a cohesive whiskey that actually isn't confused, isn't jumbled. It actually works together. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing. If we're playing around with our whiskey in our glass, we got to give it time to kind of settle and gel.
I don't know about you, but if I pour 25 mils, it doesn't take me less than an hour to drink it.
Yeah, I'm not a quick drinker, not at all.
But talking about the marrying them before bottling, Greg might be able to speak to this more because he has a lot of experience, but I think Compass Box does that as well.
I believe you're right. Greg will fill us in, I'm sure. Greg's got a lot of experience, I believe, blending himself with a distillery in France. Not to mention meetups with John Glazer. All right, I'm gonna set this aside for now, and I think we move on to our third whiskey here, our third Ardnamurchan.
Okay, the sherry.
That is where we are going next. I would say where we're going, we don't need roads, but
and they just came out with the second one, right?
Yep, the latest batch just launched, the second version of it, the 2024. It launched at the same time as the Ardnamurchan 10-year-old.
Right. Greg, I was asking about marrying the blend in a cask before bottling, like the blend it, put it back in a cask, and then bottle it. Smear Gel's asking what Edudare bottle I have in my cabinet. We were actually talking about that before. This is the 12-year-old cask strength batch 1. You can tell I'm just a bit into it. And then I've got a couple Edudares. I've got a Bellican Burgundy cask, and then a whiskey sponge as well.
Greg, you're asking if it's darker than last year's release. I don't know if it is. It would make sense for me if it was, but this is actually my release here is the 2023. I imagine that's what you've got as well, Sheldon, because I don't think the 2024 has come to Canada yet.
I'm pretty sure as well. Yeah.
All right, so my bottle here is bottle 1794 of nearly 14,000. This was a big release, and I always love it when we get these bigger releases because it means more people can get their greasy little whiskey mitts on them, much like us. Now, this was bottled by 4 people, not 3, but thank you once again to Kelly, Carney, Jess, and Keith. Bottled on April 20th, 2023. Bottled on 420. Okay, cool. Once again, Concerto Barley from Broomhall Farm, West Fife, Baird's Maltings. So that's a very common feature. It was common from the Paul Launois. It's common to this. Wash temperatures actually look a little lower on the third water, at least, than what we saw before. But I do not know enough to really pick this apart. Do you have any analysis on water temperatures during the mashing?
I do not. Who's that guy that is always in the V pubs who works at a distillery that always chimes in for Roy? That's who we need.
Yeah, 100%. But just all this is to show really is the transparency that Ardnamurchan has, right? They want to let us, give us an inside look at every angle, every little aspect of the Ardnamurchan Distillery. Totally. Fermentation, once again, average is 76 hours. There are a few aspects of these things that I want to touch on. So remind me to go back to fermentation there, Sheldon, as well as distillation. But distillation here, 66.7 to 76.5. So it looks like they got a little bit, they started a little bit earlier on this cut here, looking at the hydrometer.
Yeah.
But again, diluted the spirit down to 63.5%. And then if we're looking at the cask makeup here, looks like it's all 2018 vintage, bottled in 2023. So in and about 5 years of age, blend of peated and unpeated spirit. And it is all sherry casks, whether that is, like, for instance, Spanish oak Pedro Jimenez or American oak Oloroso cask, Spanish oak Oloroso cask. It looks like there's a good deal of Spanish oak Oloroso casks in here, which my information about the sherry cask industry is oftentimes it is actually American oak sherry casks that we're finding in our whiskey. So if this is specifying Spanish oak, then that's something actually to be noted. Yeah, but totally. Really interesting, and I love all the nerdy details that they're giving us here.
Yeah, this one to me is always, it has, because I've had, I don't know, I guess about chunk of it out, but it's kind of quiet compared to the others.
Yeah, much more muted nose. The first thing you get off the nose is a little bit of like a sweet herbaceous note towards like a spearmint. So maybe like a spearmint with leather.
Yeah.
Touch of tobacco.
Yeah, maybe it's just because the other things I've had right before it, but it sort of comes off a little bit more medicinal than I had remembered. With like the peat kind of coming through.
It is kind of going into that sort of like more iodine direction, which I don't know. Again, if we didn't have something quite as bright and vibrant as we did the first 2 drams, we might not have picked that up. I don't remember picking that up in the past with this whiskey. Yeah,
it's not in my notes either.
Well, that's why you do this side-by-side comparisons.
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely more on the earthy notes, less sweet, more towards the earthy and savory sorts of sherry.
Yeah, I noted garden soil.
Garden soil, yeah. We're getting like cigar box too, like the type of wood, along with that tobacco that you get in a humidor or like even just a shipping container for cigar boxes.
Maybe like, do you remember? I don't know if they still sell them or not. Is those like wine tip cigars? They're like really skinny. They have the wine tip on them.
Captain Blacks. Yeah, prime times and Captain Blacks are what I remember from high school anyway.
Right, exactly. That's what I was going to say. That's the kind of thing like when you're under 18 that you get your older friends to buy you because you think it's cool.
100%. I remember grade 10 fishing on the Vedder River for salmon, hacking back packs of Captain Blacks, the vanilla tipped ones, the sweets, and
Right.
I remember, not to divulge too much into a story, but I remember standing on a rock in my waders. I hooked into a Chinook, which a Chinook's a big salmon. This one was about 30 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I hook into it and it starts going, and I slip on the rock and I land on my arse in the water.
No.
And I was smoking Captain Black. I lit it. It was dangling out of my mouth. I was taking a drag as this happened.
Right.
And so I fall, I take a deep breath, and that smoke that set me. I never turned back to Captain Black's after that. The hack attack I had after that was horrendous.
No,
I
thank
still
you.
landed the fish.
There
But
you
I think I gave away the rest of that pack and I never went back.
go. That's funny. That's a good story.
Oh man.
Kind of like those Brookside chocolate covered berries.
The blue ones for me.
Yeah.
Dark chocolate with the blueberries.
Yeah. Also like a raisin tart, but sort of like it's been burnt, like you left it in the oven too long.
Cliff, you're in Sydney. That's perfect, buddy. Thanks for checking in once again, Cliff. Appreciate you being here. And yeah, Bishop Cellars ships for free. Awesome. Yeah, if you haven't had an Ardnamurchan, that AD bottle, don't hesitate on that if it's at a fair price. Really good, really nice whiskey. All right, I'm gonna take a sip of this sherry cask release 2023. Leafy tobacco is the way I'm gonna go with that sherry there. Again, it's still going towards in more that earthy direction for me.
Totally.
And there's a certain richness with that too, because we do have the sweet tones too, for sure. A little bit of like prune or like raisin, like trail mix raisin for me is I have a lot of trail mix. That's what I bring to work. And so I'm on that, but there's this richness towards the back of the palate too, that along with that smoke, it's just really lovely. I'm digging that palate immediately. And maybe it's just because I'm set to enjoy this type of whiskey, but that is right in my wheelhouse. And that's the type of sherry that I think I vibe with a lot more than the really sticky sweet stuff.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Like I said, when I first opened it, it was very tight. It's opened up more now compared to when I had it last. Yeah, I'm sort of on the front end, I'm sort of getting that red and purple fruit, blueberry, black plum, black cherry, that sort of thing. And then to near the end of the palate is sort of where it goes to more like burnt coffee almost. Like it's been sitting on the pot too long.
That's why I'm probably liking it. That reminds me of like a cowboy coffee, like camp coffee. There's a certain bitterness to it. So the coffee note, I think, is really apt. Almost like maybe like dark chocolate covered espresso beans.
That's a good one, actually. Yeah, good call. Good call. Do you get anything on the late palate, like sort of like it's like matchy, like a matchstick or match strike pad or like a something like that? I don't want to say sulfur, but
okay. Looking for it. I can see where you're going with that there. Which, if we're talking the S word, if we're talking sulfur, that is my. Actually, I enjoy the kind of like matchstick, match striker type of a sulfur, and a little bit kind of calling back to an earlier conversation off screen. We were talking about this type of sherry cask in our first impressions, and I kind of compared this to almost like an Edredauer sherry cask style, that like signatory sherry cask style that oftentimes goes much more earthier, much more darker, and a little harder to access than say those really like sweet kind of like modern sherry casks. To me, I get that type of matchstick match striker sherry sulfur from signatory and Edredauer casks in particular quite often. And so I think I'm there with you in picking a little bit of that up. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I think your comparison there to Edgewood Hour is very spot on because as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, this reminds me of Edgewood Hour 12 Caledonia. That was more a little bit like on the nose, like more gluey. I'd have to look back at my notes, but the Edgewood Hour 12 was kind of more glue and that kind of stuff. But this isn't that. But on the palate, I think you're 100% right. But it is different.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely do get that like on the nose, that like kind of charcoal briquette sort of idea. Like you spilled a sweet barbecue sauce onto the briquettes of your barbecue.
As soon as you said briquette charcoal barbecue,
Yeah.
that's where my mind went. On the later palate, I was thinking more like barbecue sauce, like slathered like meats, like chicken, like that sauce in particular. But it's got a bit of like that blackening to it, that blackened sort of state. I'm really digging this, honestly.
Yeah.
I know my own personal preferences, and especially this time of year, this is the type of dram that I'm drawn to. I also know a friend of the channel, Joel Kritko. He's local and he actually lives in the same town as me here. He lined up with me overnight at the Fall Spirits release because we did that again because we're wild like that, I guess. And this was his favorite release from last year. This was his favorite whiskey for the year up to date, anyways. I know a lot of people really connected with this Ardnamurchan Sherry Cask release, and I think I can see why. Like, by no means is it the most complex whiskey I've had, but I can see what's going on here would be very appealing. I mean, it's a dram that I think anyone who likes peak could probably jump into at any time of day.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It was not what I was expecting. I thought like, oh, sherry cask. Maybe it didn't register me that it was partially peated, but I was expecting like a sweet, bright cherry, bright sort of red and purple fruit, and it's not that.
I love that you joined us in this, Tim. Thank you for pouring this out in your glass. When I catch up on the chat here, maybe we'll see some of your tasting notes here.
Yeah,
80 sherry dram on an empty stomach. Okay. Hopefully that works out for you. Do you have any empty stomach drinking stories there? I've got one that pops in my mind.
Actually, like when I was growing up, I didn't really drink alcohol. Like it wasn't my thing. Like because I saw my friends abuse alcohol quite badly, and I didn't want to partake in that. And then sort of as I got older, kind of realized it for sort of enjoyment and sipping sake rather than to get drunk. But I do have an embarrassing story from Vegas of strawberry daiquiris, but I don't know if you want to hear that or not.
Oh man. I think that's an interesting kind of way to come into whiskey too, from a background that has, been a little bit, like reluctant or suspicious, not wanting to, get into the same trouble that friends get into. I know with my family, there is some history of alcoholism in the background, like with some uncles or others. And, it's something I always check in on as we go along. I think it's important that we talk about these sorts of things because a problem can start before you know it. And before you know it, you're in the deep end. And so whiskey breaks, taking weeks off, if not even longer, and checking in on the amount you're consuming. I mean, okay, I've got four drams in glasses here, so, but this is probably going to do me for the week here after a live stream. And so you just got to be careful with it. So I think coming from that background, I appreciate that.
No, you're absolutely right. I think it's something as a community we need to sort of tackle a little bit more head on and talk about. I know Roy did a VPub on health and alcohol and whiskey, how that fits into it, and I think it's an important conversation. I mean, dependency is one issue that certainly does creep up on people and is a big problem in society. But even like the long-term effects of alcohol, right? I mean, they had like 15 weeks drinks a week was acceptable and standard, no problem. And then last year the Canadian Health Board came out and said anything more than 2 a week is sort of pushing it. So I think it's a good conversation to have. I know it's not the best funnest topic for people to watch, but I think it is important to like, hey, like what can you do with making sure your water intake is up? What supplements can you take? Dry weeks and that kind of thing. So
100%.
Maybe that's something we can think about.
Tim gave us some feedback here. So good. One of my best sherry cask bottles. You hear me, Buna 18 and Springbank 15 shots fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems that those who like this bottle like it a lot. Really do.
Buna 18 was my whiskey of the year last year.
I remember that.
Oh, that bottle was. I finally came available and I snagged another one. So good.
Oh man, I'm really jiving with this. This is right up my alley. I do have to say. Drinking on an empty stomach. Circling back to that. I was walking the Camino de Santiago with a buddy in Spain there, and if you're not familiar, it's like depending which route you go. Mine was 900 kilometers long. It's a pilgrimage. It's a Catholic pilgrimage to the north of Spain, and we're near the end of it. We're less than 5 days away from Santiago, and we came across this bar with this wall of just beer bottles. And we stopped into this place for breakfast, and they had craft beer, and we were both big craft beer guys. And so my buddy thinks he's really, really smart, really good with Spanish, and so he makes a joke in Spanish. He says, "Oh yeah, 2 please for breakfast." And before he knows it, she's cracked the bottle tops off these beers, and I think they were like 8% beers, and it was no later than like 7:30 in the morning, and we've got 35 kilometers to walk this day.
Right.
And we're like, okay, we can't walk with this beer. So we chugged the beer, left the bottle on the wall with all like the thousands of others, and then felt wretched the rest of the day. It was bad. It was bad. I'll never remember that. I'm sorry. I'll never forget that. That was bad.
Reminds me of like being at a Mexican resort. It's like breakfast, tequila for breakfast. Sure, why not? That seems like a good idea.
Yeah, that goes for you.
Pour it. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, that was not great. Smirgel is I'm drinking an Ardnamurchan Single Cask for Germany, Pedro Menace Sherry and Peated. Ooh. I cannot see how that could not be good, honestly.
Yeah.
If it's any bit as good as this Ardnamurchan AD Sherry Cask release 2023, I think you're in for a nice dram in your glass there, Smirgel. And then Greg on that topic, same early story for me, Sheldon. Very, very low alcohol consumption before my 25 years. Yeah. I think that sets you up well for actually, appreciating it in your older years. I know I appreciate it much more now than I did when I was younger. I think I respect it a bit more than I would if I was into binge drinking as a high schooler.
Yeah, totally.
Smirgel checking in on that too. Yeah, started drinking very late, around 27, 28. Went from 0 alcohol to my first Scotch being Lagavulin in 16. Hi, oh wow. Okay. 0 to 60. I think that's a gateway dram for a lot of people. I know Roy has talked about Lagavulin 16 changing his whiskey journey. I've heard that from a lot of people when I've been pouring whiskey at whiskey festivals too. Like Lagavulin 16 was just the one that made it click for them.
Yeah. I've only had it once, a sample that a friend gave me. Because the price is insane and it's 43%.
Yeah, I've never actually purchased a bottle of Lagavulin 16 myself, simply because the prices in Canada are ridiculous. I don't really want to spend $180 Canadian here in BC for a bottle at 43% ABV. As much as I appreciate it every time it's in my glass, it isn't compelling enough for me to spend that kind of money on it.
No, for sure not. There's so much better bottles you can get for that amount of money. It's not even a close comparison.
Yeah.
Very pruny for me now.
Ooh, okay.
Pruny. Maybe pruny mincemeat, like a mincemeat.
Mincemeat pies?
Yeah.
I think one of the things we'll have to circle back to with Ardnamurchan here, and I kind of referenced it, is there's so much about this distillery that is to be commended and to be celebrated. And
right.
Whether that is if you just start on this topic, their commitment to trying to be as sustainable as they can as a distillery while making fantastic whiskeys. So whether it's they use a biomass boiler to heat their stills and to heat their wash, and to provide heat for the buildings there. The biomass boiler is fuel using local wood chip from made from invasive North American pine that's growing on the peninsula, that's then replaced with local tree species.
Interesting.
Um, they have, I believe, their water source is the river there, but you know they reuse a lot of different products there. Obviously, we've heard a lot of stories about, you know, the draft from the mashing process being used for livestock. They do the same sort of thing, but
Yeah.
there is an environmentally conscious bend towards them making whiskey. So I think that's really cool, their sustainable approach. But then you look at other things like they're using traditional, and this is past the sustainable portion, but if you look at the way they're going about things, using traditional dunnage warehouses for at least 6 of their warehouses, of their 6.5 to 7. If you're not familiar, warehouse 1 has 2 floors. Bottom floor is traditional dunnage. Upper floor is a second warehouse floor, and therefore the ceiling is kind of the floor. So it's not a traditional dunnage warehouse, but for the most part, dunnage warehouses. The water source they use to then dilute their spirit down to that 63.5% barrel entry proof that they actually start in the cask. They're using very minimally treated water. It goes through a UV filter, small UV filter, instead of being distilled water. And so some of the characteristics and aspects of that Ardnamurchan water source can still come through. And perhaps that's where some of that coastal salinity, or maybe even that mineral note that we're getting in so many Ardnamurchans, maybe that's part of where it's coming from.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. On the sustainability front, the Launois and the single cask both came wrapped in that tissue paper. I don't know if yours came that way too, which is
Yeah.
really neat. No box. I mean, who needs a box? It immediately goes in the recycle bin. But
Yeah.
but one of the papers was like, they're large. They're like, you know, a foot and a half by a foot and a half, and one of them had like the team sitting doing a blending session, and the other one was like a map of Ardnamurchan. They were both really creative and cool, and that's the way I think things got to go.
100%. Yeah, I think again, there's just that thought put into every part of the process. And let's talk B Corp certification, because like Brookladdy and Westland, I believe, are both B Corp certified, meaning that, you know, they have sustainable practices, that it's more than just, you know, something that they advertise. It actually is in their ethos. But they also pay their workers a fair wage, a working wage, a living wage. And from what I can see from, I mean, Ardnamurchan, to my knowledge, isn't B Corp certified, but they have all the hallmarks of that, and it just feels like they are a very good citizen, and treat their workers well. Because
Yeah.
from what I've talked to Connell McKenzie, I've talked to Carl Crafts, they
Mm-hmm.
all seem happy. Whenever Roy's had people on the V Pub,
Yeah.
they always are just beaming and glowing with
Yeah.
what they have to say about Ardnamurchan. I feel like they treat their employees really well, which I cannot say enough good about. And they seem to cross train their employees in almost each aspect of the distillery. Like if you know how to do one part, they're gonna teach you how to do the other. It's kind of like a family sort of
Yeah.
vibe to the place.
Yeah, absolutely. Good points for sure.
Yeah,
Sugar King said she kept her, or he kept his tissue paper, and I did the same. They're both over over here, folded up nicely in a little thing because they're neat.
Let's see here. Was that a cat?
Oh boy, you could hear the cat. Yeah. Oh no, it's cat on you on Whiskey Tube. Hey, okay, there
Yeah.
she is. Hello. She's old. She's like 15. She's
Oh,
not very nice. She just is around.
I'm gonna tell you right now. I feel like we've lost your feed here, Sheldon, because all I can see is Ralphie now.
That would just have I'd have to put the back of the cat to the camera, then it'd be
Yes,
Ralphie.
yes, that's right. That's right. Pete finished dinner, opening the AD 10 to compare with my Adelphi 10 from the Edinburgh Whiskey Fringe. I heard so much fantastic stuff off that Adelphi 10 from the Whiskey Fringe Festival. Very jealous you got a bottle of that, Pete. The AD 10, I am very much looking forward to landing over here in North America. And it would be very interesting to do a comparison of the Paul Launois versus that AD10, because I believe about half the casks of that AD10 went through a Paul Launois cask finishing themselves. So really interesting. You got some great Ardnamurchan drams on the table there, Pete. And following up, I think this AD10 needs some time in the glass. The Delphi 10 is definitely my second favorite Ardnamurchan. I love a bourbon cask. Oh boy. On that Lagavulin 16 cost here, $187 here in Nova Scotia. Yeah, that seems like a fairly typical price here in Canada for Lagavulin 16, which is why it sits on shelves.
Even here in Alberta, which is usually cheaper, it's still that price.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and we'll talk a little bit about pricing in a little bonus segment at the end here. Something has to change. Something has to change. Otherwise, I think there's a lot of companies that are in for a lot of trouble. Greg, there is indeed some minerality in AD. I think I noticed it immediately when I tried my first one last year or so. Yeah, 100%. Yes, as you mentioned, Sugar Kitty saying, I still have my Ardna tissue paper. Smirgel, Matt, your single cask bottle is missing a dog tag. Did they stop adding them to bottles recently? Yeah, we're going to talk about that. I have an idea of what might have happened with that, but this one over here, the Kensington Wine Market bottling, does not have a dog tag attached. Whereas you probably see over here, this Aquavitae Barflies bottling has this metal dog tag attached. So I don't have an answer for you, a definitive answer, but I have some ideas of what might be going on with that. And so let's turn our attention to this Kensington Wine Market Ardnamurchan Single Cask. I'm very excited to do this. I'm just getting the slideshow all prepped for you guys. And what we have here is Kensington Wine Market Ardnamurchan AD 1116 cask 1146. First thing I noticed with this bottling, and I think you might have been the same way, Sheldon, was the price. $132 Canadian. Wow. Yeah. Just wow. Compared to the last Ardnamurchan, I remember in Alberta was the cask 358. It's $180 if I'm not mistaken in Alberta, around that. And in BC, it did come to one store here on Vancouver Island, the Strath, great liquor store. It was $225 here in British Columbia. And then there was a 15% tax on top of that because BC things. All this to say, about $100 more than this Kensington Wine Market Ardnamurchan. Any thoughts on the cost of this bottle, buddy?
Well, I was blown away. Like when I went to pre-order it, I thought it was a mistake. I was like, oh, that can't be the price. I think they're normally $180, and that was that. And then it came through and I was charged the $130. I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's, and Andrew from Kensington put an Instagram post out about it. And I commented like, oh, great price. Thanks. And then he made a reference that it was Ardnamurchan that was the one who sort of gets it and understands the climate. And they were the ones who priced their stuff at that amount. So yeah, it's crazy when everything's going up in price, it seems, and, doubling in price, for things to go down, especially that significantly is a shocker but appreciated. Yeah.
No, it's massively appreciated. And for me, I mean, I have to ship out of Alberta, and shipping through other means because it's illegal gray area shipping out of Alberta. I have to have someone pick up the box for me. It has to be packaged, and then it has to be shipped out. Shipping's expensive for me out of Alberta for sure. However, that's why I do big shipments. I see Smeargel asked $132 Canadian plus shipping. Yeah, plus shipping. You got it. I shipped mine along with 14 other bottles.
That's how many was in your bottle.
I had 15 bottles in my box coming from Alberta. It was all my purchases over the last 6 months. So I'm loaded up for winter here, buddy. This is going to be a good winter of bottle cracking. But I'm going to start going ahead and actually pulling the tab on this bottle because we got to get this into a glass and open up a little bit as we keep talking about all the nerdy details about this one here.
Yeah, totally. I'm really happy to do that too.
And checking in with Pete and his AD10 here. Not feeling this AD10. It's okay. I'll have to try it again another time. The Adelphi, on the other hand, yeah, it might just be suffering a bit in the shadow of that Adelphi whiskey fringe bottling there, Pete. I heard that that particular Ardnamurchan was like nectar from the gods. So there's something satisfying about pulling the tabs on these on these sleeves.
No, yeah, you're right. They rip so nice. They got kind of that kind of foily stuff.
I mean, the presentation is just phenomenal when it comes to Ardnamurchan anything. I was just about to reach for a glass here, a Glencairn, and I had to pause and reach for another one because I was about to pour it in a Macallan Glencairn, and I don't know, I just felt a little dirty doing that. So I like my Macallan Indies, but I'm gonna go with this glass instead.
I do still have a tiny little sample of the Cask 358 that's mentioned there. I did review it on my page, but still have a little drip left because I liked it so much. So I'm going to pour that in, and then we can sort of compare it side to side.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's exactly the way to go. I'm going to shuffle my bottles down here, just do a little housekeeping as we keep going.
So the 358 will be in my Glencairn, and then the new one, 1146, will be in my
I likewise will have a bit of a comparison at one point here. I'm going to pour a little bit of the cask strength. The first cask strength release, the 800222, because as far as I know, it was one of the closest bottlings to actually a fully peated release by Ardnamurchan for a while. It was, I believe, about 84% peated stock in that, and then down to the unpeated was about like 16%. So I might do a comparison with that. Down to some of the nerdy details on this one here. We have Kelly, Holly, and Reese once again to thank for bottling this beauty. Bottled on March 26th, 2024. Once again, it's the Broomhall Farm in West Fife. Concerto Barley, once again. Here we have our water temperatures for the first, second, and third water. Once again, I don't know too much. We need, as someone mentioned, Michael Henry to check in here from the Loch Lomond group. He'd be able to have lots of insight on that for sure. 76 hours average age of fermentation. So we've seen that pop up 3 times here.
Yeah.
I wonder if there is actually a bottle of Ardnamurchan that has a different average hours of fermentation. I'll have to go through all my bottles, I guess 6 bottles of Ardnamurchan after this with my my phone scanning QRs to see. On that fermentation, I know when Ardnamurchan started out, they had some cognac casks, like ex-limousine oak casks. And I believe they've replaced these now. They had them actually warp on them. And so now they have 2 made from oak, 2 made from Oregon pine, and 3 made from stainless steel. So there's a combination of stainless steel and wooden washbacks, which I'm a big fan of wooden washbacks because of all the wonderful bacteria that can give you lots of really crazy, funky flavors. Sorry, guys, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold here if you see me coughing. Hopefully none of that comes through the mic. The spirit cut, 73% down to 64%. Once again, watered down, diluted to 63.5% for that barrel entry proof using water from the Glenmore Spring. And again, they're not using distilled water. They're using water that has been UV filter treated, but treated very minimally. And I do wonder what kind of impact that has on the whiskey. Another thing that I'd like to mention is the line arms on Ardnamurchan stills. They do seem to be quite short with a downward angle, which could lead to capturing a bit more of that kind of like rustic, more like medium to heavy bodied Highland spirit. Really, it feels like their stills are kind of set up for that type of spirit to come off. Cask type, we got American Standard barrels, American Oak ex-bourbon. So that's what this cask was a ex-bourbon cask. I know from the information from Kensington Wine Market is entirely first fill ex-bourbon. That's what it was. Peated and filled in 2016, as we saw, bottled this year, March 2024. Puts it right around 7 years old. Don't know the exact age. Could be 6, could be 7. If I got no, I guess it would be 7 or 8. Part of my math there. So it's either 7 or 8 years old, but in that ballpark there. All is to say, very excited because I have tried that cask 358 in the past there, Sheldon, and that was probably my favorite Ardnamurchan single cask I've had. It had some really kind of funky, cheesy, and just like smoked cheese notes, and I do love that in a whiskey.
Yeah, smoked cheese
All
is
right.
a good one.
Turning my attention to this Ardnamurchan.
Not super peaty or smoky.
Nope, not hyper smoked. The smoke is there in the background, but first thing I get is like boiled sweets, melon,
Yeah.
like maybe some like lychee or like really bright, juicy fruits.
Yeah, I think there is that undertone of cheesiness though. Like a
Absolutely.
harder cheese.
Like a really like a nice aged cheddar.
Yeah.
But I'm getting those rocket candies, that chalky mineral note that we talked about earlier too, on the nose.
Almost like florally. Maybe that's cheesy floral.
Yeah, I could pick up something floral on that. Like, it's not like Bowmore floral. It's not violet.
You know, it almost reminds me of Bladnock. That's a weird comparison from.
Oh wow! I mean, I get there with the cheesiness. It's not as cheesy as I find Bladnock oftentimes goes, like the Bladnock 10 or 11. I do love the cheesiness, like sour cream glazed donut vibes. I get off of those vibes to go ultra Tim Hortons and Canadian here, but
Yeah, Tim Hortons, eh?
ooh, there's like a eucalyptus or sort of like mint note on the nose.
Ooh, yeah.
Picking up on that bit of added bit of freshness with that, that cheesiness, that smoke.
Yeah, I'm with you. And there is I always in my head, Ardnamurchan is an island distillery. Like it always presents like an island character.
I can see
but
that.
I sort of get that salinity, coastal sort of idea, right? The other one, it is very clean though. Like it's not a dirty Isla peat. It's like a clean.
That is exactly what I was going to highlight. It's somehow it's a very clean whiskey while still having a bit of that cheesy note to it, which I appreciate that balance, that deft touch. I can see already from the nose why they picked this as a single cask, because it has a certain level of poise that I'd almost expect more from a whiskey that's been blended, vatted together to pick different elements and put them together. But this is a very cohesive and engaging nose. I'm really loving this nose.
Yeah.
This is kind of like wheelhouse peated whiskey for me. This is awesome.
Yeah, I was expecting to be heavier peated, like because I remember. Maybe it's dulled a little bit in the glass, but I remember the 358 being more pronounced. But maybe that.
I remember the 358 being more pronounced, and perhaps that's down to it being a little bit younger. But I also remember having a more distinct, like, funky smoke to it as well. This is definitely prettier, cleaner.
What about something like a yellow apple, or like those Asian pears, that sort of thing?
I was going to go pear, yeah. If I had to go with an apple, it'd be like it'd be more along like not Granny Smith.
Green.
Like Gala, like a Gala apple.
Okay.
Like definitely for me, it's more along like red apples than like green apples. Yeah, I'm really liking this. Like,
yeah,
I don't think it's gone tropical.
No.
But if someone said it to me, I could be led down that road. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. The power of suggestion is big.
Yeah. All right, cheers, buddy. I'm putting this one down the hatch.
Cheers. Honeyed.
Yeah, honeyed, boiled sweets. That finish is where that peat is really kicking in right now.
Yeah, it comes up through the back, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's coming through a bit funkier. Like I remembered that 358. Oh yeah, I can get like a bit of like smoked cheese off of that right now. Smoke like, oh, what was the one I had? It's not like a smoked. I mean, it could be like a smoked cheddar, but regardless, like a smoked cheese on the finish right now. The more I go back to the nose, I am picking up a bit of that funkiness. Like, and Andrew Ferguson at KWM will be one of the first people to throw like a really weird note out there. And I mean, when I went back to that nose, I got a little bit of like gym sock sort of vibe.
Gym sock. On the 358 is sort of more in the direction of like air freshener, linen, that sort of.
Yeah. Wow. This is a really, really lovely palette here. A bit more about this KWM cask. The cask samples were drawn by Carl Crafts. You guys might have come across Carl on Instagram or on any various streams or just representing Ardnamurchan around the world. But this was among the samples drawn by him from the warehouses. This cask was picked as the favorite among the lot by the Kensington Wine Market crew, which they do as a group, is my understanding. And again, I don't know if you've ever had a dud from KWM there, Sheldon, but I've never had a bad cask pick from KWM.
No, and I bought quite a few of them. There was one that I didn't quite get along with, which was okay because I just bought the little sample, but everyone else has been spectacular. Even a really funky one was a Mortlach in a California red wine cask, and you wouldn't think, but it's so weird that it's good. So like meaty and the berries and stuff just makes a weird combo. But yeah, the casks they pick are always spot on. You can always trust them.
Yeah, 100%. This was drawn from warehouse 3 of the 6.5 sort of warehouses that they have. It's on the hill behind the distillery. As I kind of tried to describe earlier, it's one of 6 to 7 warehouses on the site, with warehouse 1 having an upper and a lower floor. And this should be peated to around 30 ppm. Well, this one would be peated to about 30 ppm, though they do heavier runs of 85 to 90 ppm a couple weeks of a year. And some of this information is coming from Carl. He was very kind with his time and took some time to chat with me about this cask. And I think just there's a lot to be proud with this cask, because this is beautiful whiskey. This is performing exceptionally well for having just had the corks popped off these bottles.
Yeah, I put a dash of water in it, and it sort of made it like kind of brighter, like kind of yellow or green grapey. And then on the palate, you sort of mentioned that gym sock. I get that on the late palate, sort of before the peat comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta lick the dirty gym sock. Not that I do that often. That's a fun thing about notes, eh? Like even if you haven't directly experienced it, you can sort of put it together and be like, yeah, that's what that is.
Evoking that sense. Because yeah, there's a lot of things that I'd say about tasting notes that I'd hope never to actually get the chance to try. Like licking a gym sock. Yeah. I'll leave that to others. I'll leave that to science.
I had a sample from my friend from this small little distillery. He didn't even tell me the name of it. He put it as a mystery dram, which was sort of cruel because it like the nose of it was like plastic bags and IKEA furniture. Like it was just really bad. But it's funny, all the interest. You can probably know that I like fun, creative, off the wall tasting notes.
I just had to check the ABV on this because I was like, I'm really not getting much sensation from the alcohol, as in like it's not harsh. It's very approachable. It's 57.5% ABV. I would have, I mean, knowing the age, I would have pegged it around that. But honestly, that's drinking very nicely. That's drinking closer to like 52, 54 for me.
Yeah.
So, Smeargel, you were asking about the little dog tag that comes with this Ardnamurchan single casks, and it came with my blue barfly. I have a theory about this, and I haven't talked to Andrew at KWM about it or Carl with Ardnamurchan, but my guess would be that that price, $132 Canadian. I broke that down in euros the other day. I can't remember what it equates to in euros, but it's not a whole lot. It's a lot cheaper than I've seen any other Ardnamurchan single cask out there. I think they might have tried to like just work the price down, and part of that might be not including the dog tags with this whiskey. I could see that being a reality. Perhaps they are phasing them out. That would be news to me, but I think my money is kind of on a cost saving measure just with this bottle. With the whiskey climate and whiskey market being what it is, a lot of things are struggling to sell, and for a small independently owned whiskey shop, you're going to be extremely price sensitive because you're going to have, you know, a real sense of the pulse. You're gonna have a finger on the pulse of the whiskey community. You're gonna know that people are very price conscious right now.
Well, and Andrew's been very outspoken about that too. He wrote in the newsletter, right? He wrote a big thing about, what was it, a 18-year-old or a 20-year-old for like $3,000 or something. He was, or $10,000 that he was offered. He's just like, no, like I don't want to sell it. It's just, he was just refusing to even go there, right?
Yeah, he's taken various stands over the years that usually verge on humorous. Sometimes involving, I think, bulldozers, but yeah, I appreciate that about him, that he doesn't pull any punches when he's talking about such things. And that went a bit viral. I saw a surge from Whiskey Fun even referencing that Malt Messenger newsletter where he was talking about that.
I think it was a question on the BPub too, on the quiz at the end.
Yeah, it absolutely was. Yeah, so that got noticed. So yeah, I think this price, it's just the other part I'm struggling to understand right now as I drink through this, and there's a lovely coastal influence on the palate. It's this lovely sweet peat, but in the ex-bourbon sense of towards like apples and pears, honey, like boiled sweets, and then that somewhat funky, cheesy smoke. Really lovely whiskey. This is a good whiskey, if not a great single cask from Ardnamurchan.
Yeah.
I am struggling to understand how this is still available. And maybe it is that interprovincial shipping restriction, as KWM does not ship outside of Alberta. Maybe that's what's happening. But it's incredible to me that this is actually still available.
Yeah, totally. And I don't think it'll last long. I don't think money, like there's been times where I sort of sat on something for a little bit and gone back and then it's been sold out. So I think they'll sell at different rates, obviously, but they pick stuff that they know that they like and they know whiskey geeks will like. So
yeah,
I don't think I'll have a problem.
I am finding an interesting note here in that the eucalyptus sort of spearmint I pulled off the nose on the single cask ex-bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
I also pulled that off of the AD sherry cask release. Just thinking back to that, I'm wondering if that might actually be something that's coming out of the Ardnamurchan distillate as opposed to any influences off of the casks.
Yeah, it's always an interesting thing to sort of think about, right? Like what's from the distillate and what's from the cask. I think we've narrowed down that the minerality is consistent among it.
Completely.
I'm gonna do something that I do when I open my own bottles is I start off in one glass and then pour it into another and then go back to like the empty glass on something different.
Ooh, I like that.
Anything different. Do you use different glasses, or are you just a Glencairn guy?
I experiment with different glasses.
Yeah.
I've got this Capita. I'm running the Aquavite Blue Barfly bottle through, and I was just nosing that very quickly, comparing that to the sherry cask release because obviously I do believe that this is a refill sherry cask, and so trying to pull some different elements out of that in comparison.
Yeah.
I'll use Capitas. I'll use Glencairns. I even have these like hybrid nosing tumblers that I'll sometimes use if I want something
Right.
actually put on ice, and I do occasionally put bourbon or Canadian on ice.
Yeah.
But for consistency, when I'm writing tasting notes, unless it's extremely old or extremely low ABV, I'll
Right.
typically stick with Glencairns. If it
Yeah.
is extremely old or extremely low in ABV, I might go to something more tulip shaped, like the Perfect Pour Glass or the Capita, just to try and draw a bit more out of that nose because they can be quite subtle.
Like this little SMWS guy I've got.
Yeah, completely. I love those glasses. Did you got that through a membership pack or?
No, when I became a member, I ordered one. It was only like
nice.
$15 or something. Yeah.
I do have an SMWS confession to make.
What's that?
That is that I did let my membership lapse.
Right.
If I had a membership room closer to me, it would make more sense. If I could attend more tastings in person, but just with the cost and with the increasing cost of everything, it didn't make sense for me to continue. Though I do love the SMWS, and Rob and Kelly Carpenter from SMWS Canada do a great job.
Yeah, I've had a membership for probably 3 years now, probably 3, and their bottlings are always good. I mean, they're out of the ones I reviewed, the lowest score was a 7.5 out of 10, like a very good. So it's they're always good bottles. You can't knock the quality of SMWS. I'm surprised they don't do better in the OSWAs, if I'm being honest with you. They're usually my vote. Maybe people are mad at them for having to pay for the membership, but to me, it's worth it because the bottles are always great. And I'm going to be going, like when I'm in Scotland in March, I'll definitely be heading over there. So that's one reason to keep my membership up.
Yeah,
On the
absolutely.
note, with the empty glass, getting something like in the direction of like licorice, strawberry, something sweet red, even though it's a bourbon, something like that. Something makes me think red sweet.
Oftentimes pick up like those licorice or like anise elements with peated whiskeys, especially if there's a bit of sherry involved too. But that's an interesting pull. I do have to apologize to the chat here. It's a bit of a different balancing act for me today, having a guest host. I've been a little bit lax in checking back in with you guys, so apologies. I am trying to monitor the comments as close as I can. So I do want to check in with the comments a bit here. Tim, most of my Diageo bottles are Costco purchases, bad value everywhere else. Yeah, if my Costco also sold alcohol, I would be looking for some good deals on Diageo bottlings there. I believe in Alberta, Costco does sell alcohol. Alberta's like the whiskey paradise of Canada, Sheldon. I hope you know how lucky you are to be located as such.
I do. I am very spoiled.
Smeargel, thanks for chatting on Instagram, man. I appreciate that. It's always good to catch up, and thanks for being patient with me with my responses. They can be a little delayed. Peated bourbon is the way. Poured SMWS Furtive Gherkin, SMWS release that did come to Alberta and BC. 8-year-old ex-bourbon Ardnamurchan. You have to add water to this, but it is a banger. Lovely barbecue pineapple, squeezed lime, papaya, ginger, and salted caramel.
I think KWM still has that bottle, or it was last time I was in there.
Same with the Strathliquor on Vancouver Island. They even had it on sale during their fall sale. Yeah, I think I don't think that's a commentary on the quality of SMWS or the bottle. I think that's a commentary on the whiskey market right now. Things are sticking on shelves a lot longer.
Yeah.
Greg. 7 warehouses to visit. I'd love to. Yeah, it sounds like visiting Ardnamurchan is kind of a whiskey lover's paradise where you can walk through the warehouses and it's like, oh yeah, let's see what this cask is doing today. If you haven't already listened to it, One Nation Under Whiskey podcast, the same people behind the Single Cask Nation releases, they did a behind the scenes tour with Carl Crafts, walking through their warehouses. I've gleaned a lot of information from that. Check it out for a really interesting walkthrough of the warehouses of the distillery. It's really cool. So yeah, if you can't visit the warehouses yourselves there, Greg, it's a nice virtual experience to walk through with those lovely people. I gotta say, this KWM cask is really agreeing with me, Sheldon. I have to admit, one of the bottles in my box was a backup of this bottle.
Oh, you got 2 of them.
I did buy a second. I was extremely confident that this whiskey was gonna hit. I mean, ex-bourbon, that's a check mark for me. Peated Ardnamurchan, that's a check mark. 7 to 8 years old, yeah, I'm up there. Once I saw the bottle specs come out on it, I was fully sold.
Yeah. No, you're right, because it was on their website as a pre-order for a long time, even though they had the bottle, because I bought it as a pre-order, and then they're like, hey, it's here. I'm like, okay. But yeah, even without specs, knowing anything about it, it's like, hey, we picked a Ardnamurchan cask. I was, take my money. I'm all in.
It's that Simpsons meme. Take my money.
Yeah. On the palate last time, I got sort of like a nice orangey sort of impression.
I do wonder if that's coming through the spirit. I know oftentimes a lot of fruits can come through the spirit, through the various esters and lovely compounds that come through with distillation. I know they run a fairly slow distillation process, sometimes in and about 4 hours. I think, I mean, we saw that in the Paul Launois. I believe we saw that in the Madeira cask. If we looked extra hard, we might see that in the peated sherry cask release.
Right.
And we're seeing that here. I don't think that's coming from the ex-bourbon casks.
Yeah, maybe you're onto something. Going back to the 358, which was 6 years old, 2015 to 2021, and it does smell younger. I know that's weird because it's very close in age, but
so you can actually pick up. I'm guessing it's probably about 2 years in difference between those two.
Yeah, because our KWM one was 2017 distilled, right?
Yep, 2016.
Okay, and then this one, the 358 is 2015, so not that far off.
Now that 358, was it bottled in 2021?
Yeah.
So a couple years there. I could totally see that. Now, what I am noticing right away is that my KWM glass, while we haven't spent as much time on it as some of the other releases like the Paul Launois, it is very much near empty, and I'm not sure if I poured less than that or if I've just been enjoying it that much more. That's going to need an extra little dab there. It's the only glass anywhere near empty on this table. So if the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, that might tell you how much I'm enjoying that. I did intend to pour a little bit of this AD 0222 cask strength bottling here. This one as a comparable. So I'm going to go ahead and pour a little bit of that. I did review this on the channel prior, and I do have a confession to make about this bottle, and it relates to the standard AD release. And my confession, as I put this, as I am swallowed up by Ardnamurchan bottles slowly. My confession is that I actually enjoy this AD 0121 01 bottling more than the cask strength. I found it way more accessible. I found myself reaching for it more often, maybe perhaps because it's just so easy to pour and play. I found myself sharing this bottle with people, whether it was, visiting on podcasts or pouring it for coworkers. I mean, I've had these bottles nearly the same amount of time. You can see, fill level isn't always indicative of how much you're enjoying a whiskey, right? Sometimes you're a bit more precious with something and you'll save more of it. But I'm gonna tell you right now, there's more of this cask strength left than this AD0121 because I've actually enjoyed this AD0121 more.
Was
And I
that the
think that's
inaugural or the first release?
this is the second release.
Okay.
So this is the second batch that came out. And yeah, I think it's an unpopular opinion amongst Ardnamurchan enthusiasts. I think people really, are stands for that cask strength release. I just, man, like this is a great whiskey to tuck into, and I always find like what I'm looking for with the Ardnamurchan signature style in this bottle, and that's why I was saying earlier to the our friend there in Sydney, Nova Scotia, and Cape Breton, like if you got the AD, access to it, and it's at a fair price, pick it up because that's
Yeah.
the successor to this bottling. And while it's not this batch, I have every confidence that it's probably gotten better with age because there'll be older stock in that than there is in this. And age, it doesn't always mean it's going to be better.
Yeah.
But I have full confidence that they're putting out a great product in their standard AD release, which I've seen on sale for in and around $65 in Alberta recently.
Yeah, it is quite a good deal. And if that, for sure, if that was the only Ardnamurchan that was around, I would not hesitate to pick it up for sure. It would be probably all I would drink if I was in a province like Nova Scotia with such. I was in New Brunswick for work, and I went to one of their liquor stores, and I had a greater single malt selection than they did. Like it wasn't even close. It was kind of depressing. I felt bad for the people, whiskey enthusiasts who lived there.
Yeah, when I went back to Nova Scotia to lay my father to rest a few years ago in the fall, just before Hurricane Fiona.
Oh yeah.
I was picking up bottles to share with people at the service or afterwards, and went to the Nova Scotia liquor store in Sydney there. I was looking at the shelves. I'm like, man, this is bleak, whether it's prices or selection in comparison. Yeah, no. I think we're doing pretty well with our access to the Albertan market here, Sheldon. We're blessed to have the opportunities we have to try the whiskeys that we do.
Yeah, I feel really lucky for sure. Yeah, like if you handed this to me and said this is a peated lowland, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
One of the things I gleaned from the One Nation Under Whiskey podcast, where they were talking to the individual who was running the still, was that the still shape and size, it's kind of it's on the like the medium stout side, so it's a bit wider than some stills, but not as short and stout as say Isla stills, and that's because they're trying to get this sort of in between. Like it's not like this like tall, delicate still presentation that you get from like Glenmorangie. It's not the like really heavy phenolic, oily whiskey that you are getting from Isla. They're kind of in this middle ground of this like medium heavy bodied like Western Highland style.
Yeah,
and I found that interesting to note that I think oftentimes we forget about really important instrumentation like the shape and size of the still when talking about these things and how that impacts. And when you said like a peated lowland, I can see that too, because it just has this weight and body to it, but it's not overwhelming. It doesn't like punch you with the phenolics and with the overall viscosity. It's really just like a well balanced, lovely drinking whiskey.
On my empty glass again. Now the peat is coming through, and it's sort of in that direction of a Band-Aid, sweet medicinal. So it's in there.
Okay. Ooh. So I've taken a few drams of this 80 cask strength, the original cask strength bottling from Ardnamurchan, the OD 80 0222. I do find the nose much fruitier on the KWM single cask.
Mm-hmm.
It is going coastal for me now. I'm picking up that salinity on the nose, which is lovely, like almost like a salted like lemon wedge.
Yeah. That palate was really good last time. I think I've had 3 little drops of water. Really good. Definitely in the citrus direction. kind of stuck on that a little bit. Like if we're talking about the mineral, like sort of like orange, lemon, grapefruit, sweet tarts, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sweet tarts I think is a really good call.
I think it's got a bit of that effervescence too.
Yeah, absolutely. It pops. It pops on the palate for sure for me. Yeah. Going back to the chat here real quick. Or was here? Sugar Kitty had some insight here. Accolades tend to be the fruits instead of the esters. Needs the yeasts that produce them, not so much the distillation. So I'm guessing that's from the fermentation side. So in the washbacks. Good insight there, Sugar Kitty. Appreciate that. Still coming from the spirit as opposed to casks. I think oftentimes people think so much is coming from the casks, and if it is still coming from the fermentation side of it, then that would be why we're seeing it across multiple expressions here potentially. Really good insight though. I think that 8001 bottle needs killing pretty fast. Yeah, that one's dead. That one's got to go. That's it's the festive season here, and I think that will help. I think that will help with getting some of these bottled cleared out.
I sent you a sample of this, but this is my next one that needs killing.
Oh, is that the Aaron 21? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
just
old label too, eh?
One good one, two small ones in there.
Yeah. Yeah, that needs to go too. I got a few bottles like that. It's that balance of, again, taking care of yourself and taking care of your health, and also you know, the whiskey needs to go once it gets to that point. So that's why it's good to have friends that like whiskey.
Yeah.
Greg, note, Matt, I'm with you on the reduced expressions most of the time. And I also noticed the cask strength are also often, not always, heavily peated versus moderately peated for me. They're losing SMT and are too peppery. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad I've got at least one ally in the crowd on the AD versus AD cask strength side of things there. And Sugar Kitty, I am on Isla still myself. Are you actually on Isla right now? If so, thank you for joining us. Wow. Where are you visiting next if you're still on Isla? Holy cow. That's incredible. I mean, I've been to Isla once during my trip to Scotland in 2023, and it was an experience I'll never forget. And I am very desperate to return one day soon. And Sheldon, you've got a trip to Scotland coming up yourself, yeah?
I do. Yeah, I'm going to be going the first 2 weeks for the first 2 weeks of March for my big 40th birthday, which is a bummer. But where a better place to spend it than drinking whiskey in Scotland, right? So, we're going to start off flying into Edinburgh. We're late, so we're going to stay a night there. We're going to drive all the way to Campbelltown. Me and a friend who's also a whiskey enthusiast. We're going to spend 3 nights in Campbelltown, and then we're going to go spend 4 nights in Glasgow, and then 3 in Edinburgh, and then head out. So yeah, we're gonna visit obviously all the Campbelltown distilleries, do Glengoyne, do probably Glenturret, Deanston, probably Holyrood, maybe Port of Leith, because they're all kind of in there.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the trip. So I'm really looking forward to it, and going to stock up on distillery exclusive bottles of Springbank and stuff. We're going to do the barley to bottle tour, so going to fill up on some Jimmy Johns, and yeah.
I would have done the barley to bottle tour if we had the time. Unfortunately, yeah, we just, it didn't work with our bus schedule and everything else. That's one of the advantages of having your own car. You can get where you need to be on your own time frame. We were leaving from Isla to go to Campbelltown, and just none of the days that we had would work for the barley to bottle tour. So definitely jealous of you getting to do that experience. I can't wait to see what you blend up for yourself there.
Yeah, that's true. It'll probably be like 3/4 ex-bourbon, and then the rest. That's probably what it'll be. And they may as well just mix it together now for me. I could probably tell them what it's going to be, but
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah, that'll be pretty cool.
On the subject of Holyrood, I really enjoyed my visit there.
Okay.
Really cool distillery, very interesting approach to distilling that they have there, and with, in particular with malts and with yeast varietals. However, next to Holyrood Distillery, there is a lovely bar run by, I believe it's Colin, called the Tipsy Midgie. And if you wander into the Tipsy Midgie, you will find a fantastic list of bottles, a fantastic bar, a guy who knows his stuff and is passionate about it, and very, very fair prices.
Well, it's funny you mention that because I saw a post from them on Instagram. I don't know how I came across it. I'm like, oh, this looks like a really cool place. So I followed them, and then and that's on my list to do. So we're going to go hang out there for sure. And a cool name for a bar too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Colin was I'm hoping to get the name right. He was a great bloke. I ordered an old Ardbeg committee release. I think it was Arrivedere's. I can't say the name, but it was only, I think it was only about like 6 or 8 pounds on the menu. It wasn't much. That was actually following Kilkerran 8 sherry cask, which I think was 6 pounds.
Wow.
Like, fair prices, great bottle list. He wound up pouring something blind for me to try, which I correctly identified as independently bottled Williamson, like a Lafroig.
Nice.
From Woodrow's was the independent bottler. Just a fun time. It was a great way to follow up the tour with Holyrood. So if you're going to Holyrood, stop into the Tipsy Midgie if it's open. Yeah,
it's definitely on my list. And I think Edinburgh might be more of like not so Scotch focused. Like we want to see the castle and maybe some of the museum and stuff like that. So, but I definitely want to hop into Holyrood if it's there. And
don't pass on the the vaults too, the SMWS vaults. I enjoyed my visit there as well.
Yeah,
and that's in Leith. So I mean, you can head down there while you're still getting your Port of Leith visit in as well.
Yeah.
Sugar Kitty clarifying, I am an Isla still myself. Meaning short and stout.
Oh, like the still shape. I got
you. Yes. Okay. Good clarification there, Sugar Kitty. Craig, the yeast is indeed important. Many Scotch distilleries are still behind for that matter. Yeast and barley choices, barley treatment. Westland is ahead of its time. So good to see Holyrood lead. Yeah, also on that topic, with Ardnamurchan, their unpeated whiskey, I believe they use 2 different yeast varietals. One of them being, I believe, a Belgian yeast that really helps in pulling out a lot more interesting notes as well. They're peated. They only use 1 yeast type. They don't use the Belgian on that. Although they could in the future. I mean, if it helps and aids the unpeated spirit, why wouldn't it do it the same for the peated? But they're playing a bit with some not typical yeast varietals as well. But Holyrood for sure is all about experimenting with yeast. Yeah. And I mean, if it works for brewing, why would it not work for distillation as well? And Peter White clarifying, he's in Isla, New Jersey. And yeah, Greg's a little jealous of your upcoming Scotland trip. It sounds like there, Sheldon.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward. I'm counting down the days. It's gonna be crazy. And yeah, we do have like I think 9-hour layover on the way there and like 7 on the way back through Charles de Gaulle. So we'll be sleeping, killing some time, I guess, because we're flying in so late. But yeah, so it's gonna be crazy. I've never left North America, so.
Oh wow! Okay.
First time on another continent, so.
I think it's very easy to get addicted to traveling very quickly. Yeah. And so for me, when my first ever flight was 10.5 hours, Vancouver to Frankfurt, when I was moving to Germany. And after that experience of traveling in Europe, I've wanted to do it every year. Every chance I get, I'd love to travel. And so that's been a big part of my life ever since. That was 2013, 2014 at the end of my university degree. And I hope you love it and enjoy it. And Edinburgh in particular felt like a bit of a magical city for myself and for Kyla. She fell in love with the town. She makes jokes all the time about us moving to Edinburgh. So.
Well, it's a Commonwealth country, so it'll probably be an easy transition to move, right?
Yeah, a little bit easier for sure. Greg checking in here. I would love to do the blending Springbank too. I'm all for it. I used a lot of Springbanks over the years in my home blends before prices did jump and a bit after. And Tim, same sort of vibe here. Barley to Bottle tour is great. Enjoy. And the Ardbeg release I was trying to say the name of is that one. I'm a bit sick, which is making pronunciation a little bit difficult. Arrivaverdes. I'm just gonna stop while I'm ahead, guys. I'm gonna stop. But that's the one right there. You can see it on screen.
I won't attempt it. You did perfectly fine.
Pete, I remember 40. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm staring 40. I'm staring 40 down the barrel of the gun, so to speak. Oh gosh, this is the problem. Once you get to a certain point in your 30s, you start forgetting your age. And I'm trying to remember now. Am I 35 or 36? I'm pretty sure I'm 36. But I've got a birthday coming up here in December, so it's a bit. Yeah, I'll be there before I know it. Too there, Sheldon. 40's coming for us all.
Nothing better than the alternative, like I always say.
Yeah, exactly. Greg's Whiskey Guy, noted for later, Matt, the Tipsy Midgie. Crazy name. Yeah, that's a great name. I love it. I mean, they have to have a bottle of the Ardnamurchan Midgie on the shelf at the Tipsy Midgie. That would be a crime if they didn't. And not sure if I remember 50, let alone 40. Okay. All right.
Making us feel better about our age.
Yeah, right. I appreciate it. What I want to do now is I got a few topics to finish off this this live stream. We'll maybe go ahead and do a quick comparison and summarize our thoughts on these Ardnamurchan bottles at the very end. But I wanted to bring up some whiskey news that's happened in the last little bit. Imagine you guys are pretty connected to the whiskey community and the goings and happenings, but we're going to touch on some news here, just as some topics to banter and talk about. And then after that, we'll give our final thoughts on these Ardnamurchan whiskeys, and we'll say goodbye. So popping up here, whiskey news, Ruadmore, no more. We're saying goodbye to Ruadmore and Glenturret peated whiskeys. Glenturret announced that it will stop making peated whiskey in 2025 with no further peated core releases by 2026. This decision has been made with a, quote, clear future house style in mind that celebrates the distillery's distinctive light and fruitful new make spirit, nurtured in predominantly American oak sherry seasoned casks. They're no longer going to be able to supply blenders, no need to supply blenders, so there's no need for peated Glenturret, so to speak. Now, Sheldon, I don't know how much experience you have with peated Glenturret. I don't have experience with their official bottlings, but I do have experience with peated Glenturret in their Ruadmore bottlings, and I actually quite enjoyed it. In particular, the bottle I have pictured there is a Berry Brothers and Rudd Kensington Wine Market Ruadmore independently bottled release. That it's killer. I know the SMWS has had a few bottles too.
Yeah, that's sort of where I've seen the mostly is through SMWS. I haven't picked one up. I say I wouldn't. Yeah, it's not. I have one bottle of Glenturret, the 12 from I think it's a 2022 release, but it's not really that widely available. I don't know if it is in BC, but there's only one store here that carries it, which is kind of weird.
I will say we don't get much of it in BC. All my Ruadmore does come from Alberta. We do have the official bottlings on shelves here, but BC things, they're just priced in a category where I'd rather order things from Alberta in my 15 bottle Kensington Wine Market box. It's just it's the climate of the whiskey market, and if I'm putting my hard-earned cash towards a bottle, I'm going to put it towards something that I find extremely interesting. And a 7-year-old peated release from Glenturret, I want to try before I buy it. However, go ahead.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I was going to say the 12, it's unpeated. is very good. I'm a really big fan of it. I think it's good stuff.
I've heard that as well. I know Roy seemed to engage quite well with that whiskey as well. So I do want to pick a bottle of the 12. So that's the first one on my list, and maybe that speaks to Glenturret's decision here. People are connecting with that unpeated 12-year-old and other releases. Maybe they're getting something here that doesn't that's showing that people aren't really interested in their peated whiskey because it's not from Islay, or maybe it's because it isn't what they expected from Glenturret. But
Yeah.
I think it is sad because there are fans of Rued Vor. I think it will become one of these lost styles, kind of like what we see with Loch Lomond, with like Old Rochedew and other variants of it, where eventually it'll get to the point where there's only a few casks kicking around and it'll become quite coveted. So
yeah,
I enjoy it and I enjoy what it does. However, yeah, it's a decision. I hope they're successful with their decision. They're going towards a more premium approach with their low leak bottles and the type of people they seem to be marketing to. But I've enjoyed the Glenturrets I have had.
Yeah.
Moving on here. I'm guessing a lot of you have heard this. I've been enjoying the recent Laphroaig Carchas Cask Favorites 10-year-old quite a bit. The next Carchas that follows in the footsteps of the Cask Favorites 10-year-old is going to be the Laphroaig Carchas Lower Cask Strength. It'll be out for Fégile 2025. What are your thoughts on Lower at Cask Strength there, Sheldon?
Very interesting. I don't follow Laphroaig very carefully. I've had 2 bottles. I bought 3, cask strength 10, the quarter cask, and then I have the sherry one in my closet. The 2 ones that I went through both died in the bottle, and I don't want to get on a rant too much about it, but it's super frustrating when you open a bottle and 3, 4, 5 months later, it's like a shadow of what it used to be. So that frustrates me about Laphroaig. Would I pick this one up? Maybe. I might. I mean, Lore has got really good reviews. People seem to love it. It's been around a long time. At cask strength, it might be worth looking for. I know you're a big Laphroaig fan.
I do. I really do love that very medicinal, heavy approach to Islay peat. I think it's something that's unlike any of the other distilleries offer, and so in its singularity, in its approach, and just in how wild the Laphroaig 10 cask strengths can be. I absolutely love Laphroaig in that way. However, it does have a real problem in that once you crack that bottle open, have a little bit of airspace in it below the shoulders, it does have this tendency to just go flat. And it's a real problem because we're not draining bottles every month, let alone every 6 months or even a year. Like, a bottle's going to last a lot of us a real long time.
Totally. And I thought being cask strength, it would last longer, but the first third was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. And then after that, I was like, what happened to this whiskey? It's like I left the cork off. Like, it was just nothing.
Yeah. No, it's a problem. A brand new Laphroaig with the bottle just freshly cracked is one of the experience I really, really love. And that Cask Favorites, that 2024, I'll be doing a review soon, and I'll be doing a comparison as well with the other 3 more recent Laphroaig Carchas, the Warehouse 1, the Port Madeira, White Port Madeira, as well as the PX. I am really loving this Cask Favorites 10 years, so much so that I bought a backup bottle. Now, I have high hopes for the Lore cask strength. I do have a bottle of Lore on the way from Alberta because it dropped to a really fantastic price at about $130 Canadian for a bottle, which for us, I don't know why it's always been so expensive for us, but usually it's in the 180 plus range, which I think I was never going near it with a 10-foot barge pole, as Ralphie might say. I wasn't going near it at that price, but I took a risk on it at 130, and I'm hoping it's good. But Lower cask strength does sound really interesting because my understanding of it is it's anywhere between like 8 to 15-year-old Laphroaig that's typically in there.
Those are some pretty lazy, tasty notes on the front. Peat, zest, pepper. Cool. Sweet. You could put a little more effort in.
Point me to a peated whiskey that doesn't have those three, eh?
There you go.
Yeah, I think the whiskey taster took the day off on that one.
That's right. This is getting better the longer it sits.
It is. It's bloody beautiful, honestly. I think Pete was onto something. Ardnamurchan in or ex-bourbon casks in general are just really kind of like the core of whiskey for me these days. I love a sherry cask, but Ardnamurchan in ex-bourbon, this is gorgeous stuff. This is really beautiful.
Yeah.
Taking a quick pause here to check in with what the chat is saying about these pieces of whiskey news. Greg here said, disappointing news. I usually love them. Yeah. Pete, not a fan of Glen Turret. Great restaurant at the distillery though. Yeah, I have heard a bit about that. But Greg says he's in agreement with me, and the 10-year-old peated official is nice. So maybe I will wind up picking up that 10-year-old official while I can, seeing as it sounds like 2026 will be the last year it is released. So we got a couple years if we do enjoy it to stock up. Sugar Kitty, yeah, and the peated Glen Turret just turned out to be dirty kind of peat. I liked it, but can understand that it's not a big seller and may not be right for their blending. Yeah, I could see that for sure. That's really astute, Sugar Kitty. I think that's a really good point. Peter White, what are your thoughts on the Lakes Distillery? Oh yeah, love that you guys are chatting back and forth to pick each other's brains on what you guys think about different distilleries here. Let's see here. Yes, don't get excited by Glen Turret. I get that. Maybe that's why I don't have a bottle of Glen Turret on my shelf from anybody other than independent bottlers. Speaking of the lore is full on, Pete says here. 60%, I can't even imagine. Okay. As a Lafroig stan, as someone who loves to pick up Lafroigs, whether they be Williamsons from Carnmore or Berry Brothers and Rudd or others, SMWS bottlings, Single Malts of Scotland has some awesome secret Islas that are Lafroigs as well. I'm a big Lafroig fan, and so yeah, this is definitely going to be one I pick up here, Pete. Sounds like you're a big fan of the lore, and are suggesting that this might be a cracker, as Tim has said about the 2024 Carchus. It's a cracker. This is from someone who actively avoided Lafroig for years. That is good feedback, because I have heard some suggest that this latest Carchus is actually a bit of a divisive one. Joel checking in here. Ardnamurchan Sherry Cask is my Scotch of the year, probably. Yeah, I was talking a bit about that earlier, Joel. I was referencing how you really engaged with this peated Sherry Cask release, and I'm so glad you were able to find a bottle in Victoria when you did. As you can see, my bottle is fairly full and you're local, so I'll have to get you some pours off this bottle if yours runs empty. But yeah, it sounds like you're really engaging with that Ardnamurchan Sherry Cask release. And Greg chiming in on the Lafroig. That Laffy is priced decently. Will go straight to my wish list. Yeah. And then bit clarification on the lore. I was told 7 to 21-year-old for the first batches of the reduced lore mat. There we go. Yeah, and I think that's when that's a few master distillers back now. I wonder if they're still using the same sort of recipe guidelines today. And then Tim Locks, Carchus beat Lag, Corey Cravey, Ugdal, and Kuboken 15 in my blind flight. Yeah, I could see that happening. I'm just loving the 10-year-old cast favorites. Joel can attest to. I brought that with me to line up overnight for the premium spirit release in Langley. It was a cold night. We needed something stout. That was one of the bottles that fit the list, I will say.
Camping out outside of stores isn't something we do in Alberta in the wintertime.
No, yeah, you value your life a bit more than that. I see, yeah. I did see some lines around the local Wine and Beyonds though a couple weeks back.
Oh, before the snow, I'll bet.
Oh yeah, gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're taking your life in your own hands with that.
I like Sugar Kitty's comment there. Pete, Zest, and Pepper sounds like the names of the 3 Westminster Dog Show winners. That's right, exactly. Good comment. That's funny.
Yeah, that is particularly lazy. That's a
Yeah.
great catch there, Sheldon. Well done. Well done. All right. Everyone has heard this already, I'm sure, but sad news from the Waterford Distillery. Waterford Distillery has gone into receivership and has closed at present. Founded in 2015, it closes 1 year shy of its 10th anniversary. As we're focusing on a distillery that only opened in 2014 and just reached its 10th anniversary, it kind of puts things in perspective where things went for Waterford. Will someone step in and save the Irish distillery, akin to what happened with Madeira earlier this year? And this does seem to be a continuation of a disturbing but not altogether unexpected trend in whiskey for 2024, with Pendrin shutting down their second distillery. Crown Royal recently announced that they're ceasing their build of a new distillery in Ontario. Locally here on a local level, Divine Distillery on Vancouver Island, making some really interesting and great single malts. They're closing up shop, and they're in the final months of selling their whiskey. So no further expansion by Crown Royal, one of the giants of Canadian whiskey. Pendrin is kind of taking a pause there too. Divine's closing, Waterford's closing. Sheldon, do you have any thoughts on where whiskey might be going in this next year, and if we're going to be seeing more of this?
I think so. I think the industry as a whole sort of killed the golden goose. I think they sort of took advantage of whiskey enthusiasts and the boom, and sort of just went a little bit off the rails. And now that's sort of the result is people have stopped buying. They've curtailed their spending. I mean, look at our collections, right? We could not buy anything new for 5 years and still have stuff to drink. So
Yeah.
Greg asked Crown Royal with a question mark. You don't really have to worry about Crown Royal, Greg. Just it's okay. It's okay if you don't know Crown Royal. It's okay. It's like a $20 mass market sort of blend. Actually, in December, I have a little mini bottle review of it, so it might be funny to see that. But
I think it's important to clarify, like Crown Royal's distillery was it Gimli, Manitoba, that's not closing, but they plans for expansion have to take a back seat because we are seeing this retracing in the whiskey market, this drawback. And I think you're right. Like there were some brands who have been taking advantage and have been taking advantage for a long time. But more to the point, those enthusiasts, and we're only a small portion of the market. Let's not kid ourselves. Like, yeah, blends and the people who are buying Glenmoe 10 or Macallan 12, like that's a good majority of the whiskey market. Don't get me wrong. But all this to say, we have a whiskey lock forming in our homes, as Roy has dubbed it. The whiskey lock isn't necessarily in the warehouses as much as it is in our homes. And speaking to that, it's going to be in warehouses too, because if you read Dramface and you read some of the fantastic articles on the supply in these warehouses, we have more whiskey resting and slumbering in these warehouses than we will know what to do with when it comes of age. And so there are some hard questions being asked of the industry.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think just a quick note on Waterford itself, I've sort of wanted to get in on Waterford or try something, but it's a little bit convoluted, a little bit confusing of what's what, and is 1.1 the same as 1.2? What have they done different? I don't know. It was just like you had to put so much effort in to sort of know what you're buying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was a fantastic video done, and I can't remember the name of the channel, but I checked it out, and they hit on the exact right points, and it was confusing marketing. Basically, too many different releases with not enough focus, without a clear core range.
Yeah,
Was one of I think the problems that Waterford faced. Not that they didn't have a fantastic concept with focusing on barley terroir, and doing things, doing single malt from an Irish perspective, but when the Ballymorgan and Sheestown and all these different farms, it was tough to keep it all straight. let alone with the numbering system akin to Bruichladdich 1.1, 1.2 onward and onward. Which one's the good one? Which one's the batch I want?
Yeah.
Further, there wasn't really a clear core range. I know they had the cuvee releases, but it was tough to keep it straight as a whiskey enthusiast. I pity the everyday consumer that walks in. They had beautiful bottles. Their branding looks immaculate and very engaging. I want to own the bottle, like the whiskey, because of the bottle, but also of the 12 to maybe 15 Waterfords I had, maybe one or two made me think, yeah, I would like to have a bottle of that, or I could have a bottle of that. A lot of it was still, it hadn't come of age yet, which is sad because it will it get a chance to? Is somebody going to kind of swoop in here and save them, or is it going to go to the market and we're going to see it pop up elsewhere? I want to be able to see what happens to this whiskey, but yeah, it's a shame.
Totally.
Also, I guess on the Waterford price too. Price, it was tough to engage with at the regular price, and I guess it was a good indication of problems when we saw recently in Alberta, bottles going to market for about half price, about $70 Canadian for some of those bottlings, and I still didn't pick them up. So if that speaks to how much I was engaged by Waterford's whiskey, I mean that speaks volumes.
There was only one that I was sort of really interested in. I did some digging on the Hunter barley, but then the reviews that I looked at said that the distillery character or the barley is sort of masked by the cask being too active. So it's like, well, what was the point then of having the special barley variety if you're going to swamp it with a cask? So I was like, oh, forget it.
They really, and this maybe goes to Mark Regnier's proclivity towards wine casks, and we saw that with Bruichladdich before he sold his shares in Bruichladdich. But I would love to be able to compare these barley varietals and find the individual terroir, but all these vin du naturel casks, all these different wine casks, there seem to be very little ex-bourbon or something like more basic, or even, I guess, across the board where it's the same cask type over and over, and we can do direct comparisons. I would love to be able to do the more scientific analysis of like, this is how we can tell that there's barley terroir here. But yeah, it never felt like we actually got that opportunity.
Totally. Agree.
From one terroir to another, Mark Regnier's former distillery, Bruichladdich, will release a new Islay barley single malt in 2025. This will be a 14-year-old Islay barley. And myself being someone who really loved some of the earlier Islay barley releases that were about 9 years old and 8 years old, I'm really excited for this one. One of the whiskeys I was very lucky to try in the Bruichladdich warehouses was an Islay barley release from it was Dunloss at True barley, and it was beautiful, and it was in and around this age. I think it was about 15 years old. So I'm very excited for this, especially since in one of my videos, the Islay barley version of Bruichladdich actually gave Blackguard a run for its money and how much I was enjoying it as opposed to the organic or bare barley in this particular lineup. So again, big fan of Islay barley. This one's on my list to pick up next year. What do you think about it, Sheldon?
I've never had one. I had an 8-year-old organic that I couldn't get on with, but with being a heritage variety or a special barley variety with a decent age on it, I'd buy it. I'd be excited for that as well. I did buy the 18-year-old, which was, I just found it by total accident. So that's got, some people seem to love it, or some people don't think it's so great. But I think it was $260 for an 18-year-old. So it was on the pricey side, but I didn't see it anywhere else. I had to snag it. So yeah. So I think it sounds like they're maybe going up with a bit of more age with this one with Islay barley, the 18-year-old standard. So yeah, I'd be in for this bottle as long as it wasn't, as much as I paid for the 18. If it was any less than that, I'd probably go more with it.
And there was some criticism leveled at Bruichladdich about the price of that 18 and pricing in general. And while I find them fair overall, $260 for that 18 is a high price to pay. I'm glad you got a bottle. We actually got a very fair price for that in BC here. It was about $210, I believe, 208.
Oh, wow, that is good. Yeah.
Now the problem is you have to add 15% tax to that here in BC, so you're paying at least $30+ in tax. But nonetheless, a fair price here. And I've only had a couple couple pulls off that Bruichladdich 18, but I've enjoyed it so far quite a bit, actually. But you're right, it has been extremely divisive for people who picked it up. Checking in with the chat here as we go along with the whiskey news section. Let's see here. Peter White, that was Wine and Beyond Lottery. The bourbon taters were lined up for their Pappy Van Winkle and their Buffalo Trace Antique Collection stuff. Yeah, I think that, I mean, when I lined up in Langley, the first 11 people in line, I think, were all for bourbon. And then there was Joel. And then a little bit after that was me that were interested in the single malts. So,
well, when you get the emails, like most of it is bourbon.
Oh, yeah. It's like Stag this, Pappy that, George T. Stag, Willett, on and on. Yeah,
I'm
or
just
William Willard Weller.
I'm just taking a quick comfort break. I'll be right back.
Yeah, for sure. Carrying on here, we got Sugar Kitty Crown, $20. Wow, that's probably even an expensive price for it. Yeah, Crown Royal. I do have some Crown Royal on my shelf, I do have to admit, but that's because of some sentimentality. That is not because of necessarily the quality of the product. They are capable of making good whiskey, but it's not the standard expression, so to speak. Greg chiming in here. It's dangerous indeed for new distilleries. If they are not good as being distinctive from one another, they will fail. And I'm afraid some of the new distilleries here in France might be in trouble. I am finding that here in Canada, Greg. I'm a bit worried for some of the distilleries here in Canada falling to a similar fate. And as I highlighted Divine, not because I believe you guys would be familiar with Divine as a distillery on Vancouver Island, but it does show the industry's in trouble across the board, whether it be in Sweden, whether it be in Wales, whether it be in Canada and British Columbia, or it be in Ireland. The only one I haven't heard from yet is Scotland, but I'm sure it won't be long before we are hearing of problems in Scotland with distilleries too. I have heard through anecdotes that some distilleries in the Speyside have been running silent. So I don't think Scotland's immune to this, and it will be a trying time, I think, for new distilleries in particular to have had so much overhead and upstart costs. Moving on here. Pete, there is very little love for Waterford. They should have done single pot still and kept the maturation simple. I would agree, Pete. Not explicitly on the single pot still, though that would have kept that would have been made the Irish whiskey fans very happy. But in particular, kept the maturation simple. I think that would have helped quite a bit, and that could have helped guide them towards having a actually a core range that we can understand very easily, and the general consumer could actually identify with very easily. But yeah, I think you've got some good analysis there, Pete. Yeah, exactly. You can't discern the USP. Exactly. And Greg, wrong marketing, wrong approach with a good idea, too bad. It does make me sad because we have lost the opportunity potentially, if someone doesn't step in, to see where Waterford was going with this, because this experiment, it deserves time to kind of see its way through. And yeah, I'm a little sad. That's what I'm lamenting most is the people who've lost their jobs at a time of the year where it's very difficult to lose a job, but also the lost opportunity of seeing where that goes in the future. And maybe we will still see that. Who knows? Joel Bruichladdich Stan here. He says he'll take 2 of the 18s. Oh my gosh. Get the 21-year travel retail. It's outstanding. Chimes in Pete. And Greg, for me, what Mark did wrong in Ireland, Christophe Rosier totally nailed it with a specific, clearly identifiable terroir range with all expressions matured in third fill casks, so you can compare, using some more tired, less active casks, so you can actually notice the differences that could be attributable to that spirit through the grain. And Donner Pass, again, a core range bottle with all unpeated spirit Ardnamurchan is on my wish list. Yeah, I could see why that would be on your wish list there, Donner Pass. I do believe the Paul Launois is entirely unpeated. At least the 2024 is. So that might be a good pickup for yourself there. that might be the way to go. Outside of that, it might have to come down to a single cask for a completely unpeated release from Ardnamurchan. Turning back to news, I thought it would be kind of funny to highlight some outrageous prices from some of these spirit releases that people have been lining up for. And we're checking in with Manitoba's premium spirit release prices here. First one I want to mention is Octomore 14.3. One, sounds like Octomore 14.3 is coming a little late to Manitoba. Number two, $450 for Octomore 14.3 is incredibly steep. I would not go near that bottle. I would just go without, honestly, then rather than even sourcing it from elsewhere. That's an outrageous price for that bottle. I usually see that closer to about $330 to $350 here in Canada, and it goes on sale at that price. I pity those who have to pick it up for that price.
Yeah, crazy price. Like you said, same here, around 300, between 3 and 350, but it depends where you shop. But it's still, this is 5-year-old whiskey, right? It's still just 5-year-old whiskey, I'm sure. Yeah, I did a review, I don't know, a month or so ago for a Brookladdy or the Octomore 11.3, and I thought I was going to get a lot of pushback. People saying I was crazy for my low rating, but I didn't get any. So I think people maybe have had enough of Octomore with the prices and that it's not as good a quality as it used to be. So.
Yeah. I think the releases have slumped a little bit compared to their former glory in the past. And I think the prices have exasperated that feeling as well. The prices are out to lunch. And I know I rarely buy an Octomore bottling these days. I didn't buy any from the last release. I think I might have a 0.1 that I picked up on a sale from one of the releases prior to that. But it's insane. It's insane price to pay. Sometimes it's not 5-year-old. Sometimes it's 7 or 8-year-old. But I understand that they have narrow cuts. I understand that there's more that goes into heavily peating this grain and the process and all these sorts of things. I get it. At the end of the day, it's still a price that is not comprehensible for the product we're receiving. $450. That is a crime. And speaking of crimes, Deanston 12-year-old, number one. I think we both found it laughable that Deanston 12-year-old single malt has popped up as a limited release at the premium spirit release in Manitoba.
In what world is Deanston 12 a premium whiskey?
Oh yeah, I don't know anyone who would consider Deanston 12 a premium whiskey, but looking at that price is eye-watering. $205 Canadian for Deanston 12.
I didn't pay that much for the last bottle of 18 I bought.
Oh, completely. Like, what was your price on your last bottle of 18?
I think it was $180.
Yeah, I picked up mine for I think $135 on sale at BSW in Calgary. I think just seeing this comment pop up here, Greg. Yeah, do they have gold leaf? Did they have gold leaf inside? Like, what is going on with this Deanston 12? I did look at their stock status for all the stores in Manitoba, and I tried to figure out how many bottles had sold, and I think I've counted maybe 5 or 6 bottles that have sold because it's either shipping in 3 or 6 packs, and there's like 1 bottle gone at a few stores, and otherwise it's all the numbers I'd expect to see for full packs. So I think people are wise to it; they're not picking it up, especially because what's the price of Deanston 12 these days?
Like $70.
Yeah, it's a bit more here in BC, maybe like 100 to 115. But yeah, no, that's outrageous. Absolutely outrageous.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, not for me. And finally, Tomatin, they have these special releases that come out with different cask types. And I think 2 or 3 of them have come out now. And I'm used to seeing their prices on the high end here in BC, or in about $160 for a 12-year-old whiskey, a whiskey that had 10 years next bourbon and then 2 years of some sort of finish. And this Marsala cask limited edition 2010 here, it's got 10 years plus the 2 years finishing, $250 for this whiskey. I didn't know whiskey lovers in Manitoba had it quite this bad. I hear a lot about the LCBO and the crimes against whiskey lovers in Ontario. I hear a lot about the SAQ in Quebec, and I know personally the pain with the BC Liquor Corporation here in British Columbia. But Sheldon, I'm pouring one out for Manitoba whiskey lovers.
It is rough. I guess the only thing they could do is maybe try to buy from here and get it picked up like you do. Might be an idea. But isn't Tomatin like don't they produce like 10 million liters a year or something? Aren't they like a gigantic distillery?
They are gigantic. I know a lot of their still sit silent. A lot of their warehouses sit empty because I think it was in the 70s and 80s, they were one of the largest distilleries in Scotland. I know they don't run to their full capacity, but they have the capacity to be the largest, one of the largest distilleries in Scotland. Yeah. They're not a small producer.
Yeah. But I guess neither is McAllen, and look what they charge for their bottles.
I mean, yeah, that is a fair comment. And popping over to British Columbia, because we had our spirits release, and I'm hoping you guys can see some of these details from your side of things here. But the Glendronach 21-year-old, that was one of the bottles released at our spirits release that we're expected to line up for in the cold overnight. $480 for the Glendronach 21-year-old. Now, this is not the old batches that had overaged whiskeys up to 26 or 27 years old. This is a 21-year-old Glendronach. $480 Canadian, and plus you've got nearly, $75 in taxes to place on top of that. So you're not getting that bottle home under $550. What was the last? I know you have a bottle of the Parliament on your shelves there, Sheldon. What did you pay for that?
Yeah, so that was purchased, I want to say 2.5 years ago. So it is going back a bit, but that was a 2019 bottling. So it'd be 24-year-old whiskey in there if you go by the chart that they have. And I think it was $230, $240, somewhere in that range. So this is completely insane. And this is what I'm talking about with, killing the golden goose. So how many people are going to buy that now? Nobody, because it's insanely priced.
100%. No, you're bang on. I mean, that's Dalmore levels of escalation in pricing. I mean, their Dalmore 18 jumping from like $280 to $560. Like, that's doubled over a couple of years here. It's definitely turned me off from the Glendronach brand. I don't know the last time I bought a Glendronach. And Brown Foreman, you've got a problem on your hands. I see that they've recently rebranded. Maybe that's because whiskey consumers are turning off of the brand. I don't know.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, I've heard
Highland Park. Yeah. Highland Park Cask Strength release number 5 coming in at $180 Canadian. I'm sure you've been seeing the same sales I have there, Sheldon. You're probably on the same newsletters. We've had a lot of Highland Park Cask Strength releases go on sale in the last little bit here. Yeah,
I was going to say, I was pretty sure you could get them for around 100 or 120, somewhere like that. I mean, Highland Park is definitely going crazy with some of their higher age stated stuff too. The cask strengths, though, I thought they were going to keep at a reasonable level, but I guess not. Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing lots of stuff go on sale, like lots of, like offers and special discounts, especially on the higher price stuff. Like, it seems like anything like over 1,000, let's say, they're like deep discounts on it. So I think we're seeing a turnaround in that maybe the retailers bought this stuff and they're trying to unload it. I believe, though, that in Alberta, we have a law that you can't sell whiskey or any spirit for less than the standard wholesale price. So a lot of these retailers might be in rough shape if they can't unload it for around what they paid, right?
Completely. And one of the ways we see sales that come into Alberta for like ridiculous sales, like if you remember Glengarry 17 and 18-year-old going on sale for $99 Canadian. I think that happens oftentimes because some of the rules, I looked at it importing, I wanted to import Thompson Brothers to Alberta because we all want it. Right. Let's just find a way to bring it to market.
Yeah.
And I looked into the rules around importing into Alberta. And one of the rules is once something has been in the warehouse for a certain length of period, I can't remember if it was a year or if it was longer. Once it's been there, you get charged warehousing fees for every month it's there after that. And so for some of these producers, it actually becomes more costly not to get this product moved on to the consumers. And that's where we're seeing these really deep discount sales, where these companies are really having to incentivize these stores to sell these bottles almost at a loss.
Right.
They have to cut deals so that they don't actually lose more money with it just sitting there. And you're right, $120. I saw I think it was release number 2, 3, 4, all in that like 120 to 140 range recently. I know release number 1, I picked that up for about $120 when it came out. $180. That bottle can sit and rot on the shelf for all I care. $180. That is, I mean, that's ridiculous. And then of course we have Macallan checking in here. Same company, Edrington. Macallan Time, Space, Mastery. $2,400 they want to separate you from in your wallet for that bottle.
Do we know anything about it? Like, I'm so checked out with Macallan. Do we know anything about like what is special about it? Like,
I have not a clue. I have not a clue. I think whiskey enthusiast circles have kind of tuned out, as you said. I barely can keep up with the Harmony collection and the Amber Meadow or Rich Cacao or whatever their latest thing is. It's just not for me. I don't think it's for many of us. I don't hate Macallan. I pay attention to the Gordon MacPhail Spey releases. I pay attention to the Signatory Vintage Speyside M releases. But man, I don't know. I feel like they've lost the plot. They're a very successful company, and so obviously they're doing something right, but I do wonder about what the future has in store.
Totally. And the bottle's ridiculous. Like, it is silly. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my thought on it anyway.
Yeah.
Like I said to you before, my son watched a show on Netflix called Extinct, where the creatures were kind of hamsters with a hole in the middle, and that's exactly what they would drink on that planet where those little creatures came from.
Oh, jeez.
Donut Mastery, that's what Smeargel said. Yeah.
Donut Mastery. Yeah, checking in with some commentary on this from the comments here, guys. Greg says he gave up Octomore for Port Charlotte long ago, or a while ago, period. Value is more than ever important. Yeah, Port Charlotte, there's some great value. Those Isla Barley releases, if you're looking for a mini 0.3 that's not quite as phenolic, heavily peated, those Isla Barley Port Charlotte releases, I really enjoyed. And Port Charlotte Exploration Series or the Humble 10-year-old, they're all great. But yeah, crazy prices for all these. And is that Deanston 12 made of gold leaves? We covered that a bit. It's ridiculous. Tim, the Deanston 12 price is ridiculous. Saw an 18-year-old at a local shop's website for $150 US at a store that notoriously is overpriced, I might add. Yeah, no, we're on the same page here. I don't know what's going on in Manitoba. I can pour one out for the homies in Manitoba because that is rough. Pete giving me some good news here. Octomore 15 10-year-old is 20 pounds less than the 15.3 5-year-old. Very interesting because I do love the third edition of that Octomore 10-year-old. It's one of my favorite whiskeys ever. And if I could get a bottle of that 10-year-old 15, I probably would because I have problems. And usually there are Octomore or other whiskey related.
At least you can admit you're easily influenced.
Yes. We got a rant from Greg. I always love a whiskey rant. I'll also do a rant when I'll do my highlights of the year 2024 later this year, because here in France, we have our share of that price craziness. Tasted a 7,000 euro whiskey, for instance. Yeah, not for us. Not for us. That's quite crazy. And then let's see here. Getting Parliament for 169 pounds on Amazon. Yeah. We don't have access to Amazon on this side of the Atlantic Ocean for whiskey, sadly. I'm not sure if I'd like to see that change just because of how much pressure it would put on the independent retailers here that do a good job like KWM, because once again, I've emptied my glass of that KWM single cask for a second time. That's beautiful stuff, honestly. I want them to be well taken care of because they're taking care of us pretty good here. One bottle of Glendronach 18 that is 24 years old, scored away for something special. Great that you have some of that overaged whiskey there, Donner Pass. That was the golden age of Glendronach bottles, it seems. I've got some Parliament 21-year-olds that are likewise overaged. Is yours in that camp, Sheldon? Is that one of the ones that had some extra aged whiskey in it?
Yeah, it's a 2019 bottle, so I believe that one's 24.
24, yeah. Yeah, I've got the 2019 open here. Actually, I've
And
got the
that's cool.
2019 and 2020 open. Watchman 999, Greg, also from your parts of the world. He left behind the better part of a 2019 Parliament 21-year-old with me because it wasn't in his style. And that was a really kind gesture and gift from him. So thank you if you're watching this, Greg, for that. So I got both open, and yeah, I enjoy both, honestly.
Going back to the Paul Noir and the Madeira, they're like liquid candy now compared to the peat on the. I don't know if you have an empty glass or something to just how sweet they are in comparison.
Oh, there's something like sweet grainy about the empty glass on the KWM. It's like I'm in a donut shop with that. And maybe that's influenced by the Macallan donut that we saw before.
There you go.
Oh, beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
Continuing on here, Greg with some commentary on the Macallan. Like some said that Haribo gigantic sweet supposed to be a Macallan mimicking a cognac decanter. Let's face it, yeah, that's exactly what I thought of when I first saw it was cognac. It's outrageous. Internal overreddish decoration box is hilarious. Yeah, I think again, who's it for? Who's it for? And if it's who is it for? If they're buying that, then they've hit their market. But it's not for us. Yeah, the donut bottle. Brad Dean, hey, thanks for joining us, Brad. When you consider I just got a North Star Arkney 17-year-old for $200 Canadian, this price for cask strength is ridiculous. Bang on, you're right, Mayor of Wrightville, right? I have that bottle sitting unopened here because I saw that North Star. I'm a big fan of North Star. I love what Ian Croucher's doing. Have high hopes for the Del Riata Distillery. Though I do not envy opening a new distillery in this climate. However, yeah, that Orkney 17-year-old, it's from a sherry cask. I feel like that's can't miss stuff. And for the price, I'm buying that every day of the week over that Highland Park cask strength. Great show, Brad. Greg, space mastery equals brought to Earth by Captain Kirk. Smear gel with the donut mastery. Yeah, Donner Pass with a bit of analysis here. Macallan, Bowmore, and other markets market themselves like Louis Vuitton, Rolex, Gucci. They are selling luxury status symbol thing, not the liquid in the bottle. Yep, exactly. Bang on. And I mean, that might work for them in a recession, honestly. I've heard some, there's a paradox when it comes to economics where luxury goods still do well in recession. So if we're heading for recession times, maybe that will work for Edrington. Can't say I hope it does, but yeah, that's interesting. A little bit more notes as we come closer to the finish here, guys. Whiskey news. So we saw some really terrible prices there. Let's focus on some good prices and again, what they might be telling us about the whiskey market right now. Aquavite Barflies group, if you're not a member, join it because people put out price alerts for others in the UK saying Lagavulin 12 cask strength was £50 a bottle, as was the Talisker, what was it, Wild Explorador from last year, the special release, £50 a bottle. That's a reduction of £90 on that Lagavulin 12 cask strength and a good sum on the Talisker. Further to that, in Canada, and I seized on this one because, again, as you've heard, I've got problems with my glass lock. Craig Alke's 17-year-old Speyside single malt, marked down from about $200 a bottle down to $110 Canadian. I saw that. I had to jump all over that. That was a bottle that was coming home with me. Great sales, great prices. Happy for those who were able to take advantage of them. Sheldon, thoughts? Is this just kind of speaking to what you were talking about earlier about killing the golden goose and now things are sitting and they have to take another tact?
I think so. I mean, I'd love to get a Lagavulin 12 cask strength. Here, though, there seem to be like a couple years ago they were $200, then they were $250, and now they're $280. It's like, oh, forget it. But at 50 pounds is what, 100 Canadian ish. That's a deal. I'd take that all day. The Craigellachie 17, I did like the Craigellachie 17. I didn't like the 13. I know that's an unpopular opinion because people love it, but to me it was very tinny. It was like licking like the inside of a tin of pineapples or something. Like I just couldn't get on with it. But the 17 I liked. It was more mature and liked it a lot. For $110, I'm all over that. I haven't bought one because I've been trying to save my money for Scotland because I tend to spend a lot of money there on bottles to bring back. So yeah, but for $110, great deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Diageo in particular has been feeling this because they have multiple years of special releases sitting on shelves. I know it's happening in BC. I see it happening in Alberta. I believe it's happening in the UK too. So they eventually have to move this product on. With the most recent special releases, I'd love to get the ex-bourbon refill bourbon Lagavulin 12 cask strength that just came out. I'd love to pick that one up for this £50 price. Hell, I'd probably pay a lot more than that, honestly. But with the prices you're talking about for that Lagavulin 12 cask strength this year, it's too much. It's still too much. And it's going to sit similarly to these ones sat. And I think it is indicative of the current whiskey climate in the market and the trouble that some of these companies are going to have moving whiskey. I do love the Craigellachie 13. I do enjoy that whiskey. I do think you're in the minority with your opinion, but I also don't think you're wrong by any means with your own personal take there. But I'm among the horde of lovers of the Craigellachie 13, especially at the price we get it in Alberta, like $48.
Yeah, I was gonna say I bought a bottle for $50, 50 Canadian dollars. That's like 25 pounds, but I had to give it away. I had to give it to my friend because I couldn't get through it. I didn't like it, but on paper I should because it's like everything I should like, but I just whatever.
Yeah. Oh, fair, man. Fair. I mean, that's why we do this, right? Everyone has their own personal take and an experience with it. I mean, talking about bottles you can buy for $50 in Alberta, you can get it sometimes on sale closer to like 42 or so. But the Maclean's Nose,
right?
The humble Maclean's Nose, largely made up of Ardnamurchan and Glen Scotia and a bit of grain whiskey. Yeah. I mean, that's a comparable for the cost. So I mean, Craigellachie 13, Maclean's Nose, you're picking them up around the same freight in Alberta. I think those are both bottles that people should pick up if they're in their palate and in what they enjoy.
Well, but I have a supporter. Greg's with me.
Oh yeah, is he?
He's not a fan of Craigellachie 13 either.
Oh man,
I knew I liked you, Greg. I knew you had good taste.
Oh man, all right. Let's see here. Speaking of the chat chiming in here, Greg's with you, eh?
Yeah.
See, talking about deals, Tim snagged a backup of Speyburn 15 online for $55 last week. Grab them now before Inverhouse drops the ABV. Yeah, that's our next topic coming up here. A very contentious thing. Smear gel, only Macallan's would be interested in are Signatory Vintage and Gordon MacPhail bottles. I haven't tried any of those though. Yeah, I will vouch for the Spey malts. Signatory Vintages, I have had a 12-year-old that was extremely sulfured. I'm fairly sulfur blind, but it was a bit overwhelming and a bit much. I did not buy the bottle for the reason, even though it was on sale. But overall, I think Signatory Vintage has some good Macallans, the Speyside M's.
Whiskey Sponge released their marketing malt. There was a Macallan that I probably would break my bottle ban to buy because I love Whiskey Sponge. They put out great stuff.
Humorous, insightful, and fantastic whiskey in a bottle.
Yeah.
I love what Angus is doing there in the Deccan and Drams group. And I'm excited for their new distillery too, the Kythe Distillery.
Oh boy, yeah. I'll pay whatever for one of those bottles. Yeah.
Yep. No, that's another take my money distillery for sure. Donner Pass, $109 for Craig Alki 17 Canadian. That's a buy 3. Yeah, I had to hold myself back from buying multiples. I got a wedding to pay for and Christmas to plan for. But yeah, that's price. That's a great price. I really should be backing it up. And then yeah, Sheldon, fantastic. We're only 2 on this earth now about the Craig Alki 13. You guys can form your Craig Alki resistance front. This year's Talisker 8-year-old special release was 105 at Total Wine. Yeah, it was about 120, 100 to 140 here in my parts. Not altogether unreasonably priced. Same with the Kalila, the unpeated one. I didn't find it was all that poorly priced. The Lagavulin was still really high though.
Well, and there was that I think maybe last year there was that Glenkinchie 27.
Oh,
it was like $300 or something. Like
it was like 360 here and way higher in the UK.
Yeah, that looked like that was. So it's weird how they have some things that look like a crazy good deal, and then other stuff that's way overpriced.
More talk on these Diageo special releases. I only bought my Roselle 2023 12-year-old because of Costco. Hey, Costco coming in again. $94 from memory. I would buy that bottle, honestly. I really enjoyed the Roselle 12, the inaugural release. I found it engaging, interesting, and quite a great whiskey. The price held me back, and then wanting to buy other things like Ardnamurchan. But yeah, I don't blame you for picking that bottle up. Did you pick that one up, Sheldon?
No, but I've heard great things about it, and it was on a deep discount too. I think at BSW, and I sort of hemmed and hawed. And when I was at it, I'd already bought a few things that day, so I left it there. But it's something that I would pick up. I've heard nothing but good things about it. And same with the new the follow-up release on this year.
Yeah. Greg talking about 13. Yeah, I had nice glasses with it. Preferred the 13 Bass Armagnac finish. I tried last year at the show. Honestly, the 17, 19, 25 are the fave. Yeah, it seems Craig Alki gets excessively more expensive as you go up there, which is not surprising. But yeah, they're exceptional cask picks. I can't go near for pricing, but I do appreciate Craig Alki's spirit quite a lot, as does it sounds like Pete. Craig Alki's funky, sweet, sour. Great 11-year-old from Tricara. I believe that's an independent bottler. Talking one more deal here. Sugar Kitty, best local deal. Glencadam 10 now down to $38 US. Oh, yeah. I'm a buy at that price. I'd pick that bottle up.
Yeah.
Cool. Moving on here. Scapa Zigs while Speyburn Zags. New Scapa range. Some of us may have seen Roy talking about or others posting reviews of. It replaces the former non-age statement core release range. So that there is a 10-year-old, 48% ABV, 50 pounds, a 16-year-old, 48%, 100 pounds, and a 21-year-old at cask strength for 250 pounds. This is quite the departure from, what was it, the Scapa Glanza and the Scapa, I can't even remember the other non-age statement the release they have. But
Smirkin or
yeah, the Skirin like or something like that. Yeah. It shows how much we were paying attention, Sheldon, to those Scapa bottlings collecting dust on shelves.
Yeah.
I personally am excited. I've had some nice Gordon MacPhail Scapas. I think there's a lot of potential in this distillery, and it's going to be really great to see some bottlings that come up with a little bit more ABV to give us a bit more heft in our glass. I think that they could be really successful. I've heard great things about the 10-year-old. I've heard middling things about the 16, but I do want to try them for myself.
Yeah, I've never had a Scapa. Like you, I ignore the official bottlings, and the IBs are here and there. But I've never, kind of engaged enough with it to pick it up. But maybe one of these,
Yeah. And Speyburn zagging. What do I mean by that? Well, Speyburn is dropping its much loved 15-year-old and 18-year-old releases down to 40% ABV, and I haven't seen this officially from the press release from I believe it's Inverhouse, but apparently they're doing this to suit the tastes of the American whiskey market, which I don't pretend that we represent the bulk of the whiskey market. I spoke to that a little bit earlier, but I don't know if anyone's clamoring for more Speyburn at 40% ABV. The enthusiast circles have really grabbed onto the 15-year-old. The 18-year-old's getting some love now too, but these bottles seem to be institutions amongst the barfly groups. I have yet to pick up the 15 or 18. I do intend to pick them up before they disappear. Any thoughts on Speyburn and a decision to drop their 15 and 18 to 40% there, Sheldon?
Oh, well, it's obviously really disappointing and kind of tone deaf with how things are moving, with kind of the push towards natural, unfiltered, and engaging product. I know they had a 10-year-old for a long time that was 40%. So it's like, that's your mass market. Great, no problem. And the rest of it was craft presented. I really enjoyed the 15. I think I gave it an excellent an 8 out of 10. Thought it was really good. Same with the 18. I've heard nothing but good things about. I haven't bought it, but it's usually a good price. I think around like 150, 160, something like that,
Yep.
which is certainly good for an 18-year-old. So yeah, super disappointed. I don't know what they're thinking with that. Really disappointing.
It seems to be a decision that doesn't make any sense during the current whiskey climate. I really am struggling to understand it, and I think it's burned a lot of the goodwill that had been fostered over many years for Speyburn. And it comes down to reputation too, right? You know, a reputation's hard earned and easily lost. And I think Speyburn might be finding that with the quality of the 15 and 18 going forward. I'm not gonna criticize the 15 and 18 too much without having had them in a glass and before me. But I don't know of any whiskey I've had where it's been improved by dropping it from 46 to 40. The 40 floor, I feel like the only whiskey I've ever had that's close to being bottled perfectly at 40% would be a North Star 31-year-old blended malt that was mainly Kleinleash, and it was naturally dropped down to 40.4%, I believe.
Right.
I don't know if anything really drinks best at 40%, and so I feel like they'll not find success with this decision, but they have some sort of information that's leading to believe this is a good decision. I don't know.
Yeah, it is very frustrating. Yeah, and bringing it down to 40% is one thing, but I mean, if you were just reducing it, maybe it would still be halfway decent. But if you're doing the chill filtration, I think that's where the damage is done. I think you can really feel that, like, whiskey starts going good, and then it's just like the late palate just like drops off a cliff and it's just gone. And I think if you have some vintage whiskeys and stuff like I bought from auction, a lot of them are 40% or 43%, but they're just reduced. They're not actually chill filtered if they're that old. Some might be, some not. But I think that's the biggest problem, is the chill filtration stripping all that good stuff out.
Yeah. Pete's checking in on the Scapa. That Scapa is rough, man. You need to drink it from a brown paper bag. Ooh, okay. Shots fired. Shots fired at Scapa. Greg says Scapa 10 is on his radar and had the impression that Whiskey Live Paris, it was the best value of the three. Okay, interesting. I mean, Pete, if you're able to clarify if it was the Scapa 10, the 16, or the 21 you were speaking of being belonging in a brown paper bag, I'd appreciate that.
That's so funny.
And I'll do a review ASAP of the Skirin, the 14-year-old, 16-year-old, a new 10, and a vintage Gordon and MacPhail. Oh, again, if you haven't subscribed to Greg's channel, do it, guys. It's worth it. He does great stuff. Lastly, before we rank some of these Ardnamurchans, the big question here: who's the next Ardnamurchan distillery? I feel like Ardnamurchan is the most loved of the newest generation of distilleries. The 3 straight OSWA wins for best new distillery, following that up with somehow a best distillery win. Who's on our radar for being the next Ardnamurchan, so to speak? I've got some options up here just to kind of like start our thought process. Lockley with their focus on their barley on a farm distillery, Torveg doing things in a way that should embarrass Talisker. in the future. Ardnamurchan, the latest Isla distillery to release a whiskey. I've had that 5-year-old inaugural single malt. It is wonderful. Rasse has been picking up a lot of headlines too. They work with a lot of interesting cask types with the Chinkapin Oak, the XY casks, and others. I didn't include the Hella Harris, the Hirak. There's so many others to consider for such a distinction. But Sheldon, any thoughts on who you think might be the next to follow in Ardnamurchan's footsteps?
Well, the only one out of those four that I haven't purchased was the Ardnamurchan. And that was, going briefly back to about pricing and things dropping and changing. The inaugural release was released by Co-op for like on a discount, like a flat $100, where everyone else it was like 120, 130. So that was interesting to see. I've heard it's great. I really like the first release of Rasse, the RO1. I thought was really good. I haven't picked up another one, mostly because it's a little confusing. I'm not exactly sure which one is good to get. So if anyone has a recommendation for a Rasse to pick up, another one, I'd be happy to hear it. Torveg I haven't opened it. The Lockley, though, I've enjoyed 2 bottles from Lockley, the R Barley and the Fallow, the all sherry one. And I thought they were both really good. The Lockley kind of had like a rye spice sour fruit sort of thing. It was really interesting. It sort of had its own character. And the sherry was a little bit on the same lines as this one, sort of like dark, really sort of meaty almost. And I thought it was really good. So if I had to pick one of these 4, I'd say Lockley. And I think they're starting to do their own floor malting and that sort of stuff. So they're on that path as well. So that'd probably be my pick of the 4.
Beautiful. I think that's a good pick. Speaking of floor malting, before it leaves my brain like so much else, Ardnamurchan has future plans to floor malt. They have the malting floor set up. They have a kiln. Whether or not they use it in the near future is one thing, but they do plan, it seems, to be actually floor malting their own barley at the distillery at some point, which could give way to a release somewhat like Kilchoman's 100% Isla barley release or these sorts of things. Something very, very exciting to look forward to in the future from Ardnamurchan. And I think that's one of those silver bullets that we have from distilleries. Those who have their own floor maltings have almost this singular signature style. Like Highland Park, you think about only part of their of their barley comes from their own floor maltings, but you get that Orkney Heather peat. Lefroy, similar thing. Bowmore, also similar. Having your own floor maltings. I mean, let's just throw the name Springbank out there. It is such an asset, and I think it's just something that takes a distillery to another level.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even if you look at a distillery like Glengarry, right, going for maltings and then going to direct firing in their wash still again, those kinds of things. Because like if you take a distillery like Ardmore, from the direct fired stills ending in 2001 to now, it's much different. Like I bought a 1997 Ardmore from SMWS when it was direct fired, and it was outstanding. So these kinds of things add character, right?
Completely. And I definitely hunt pre-2001 Ardmore for a reason. I think those direct-fired, coal-fired stills make a huge difference. And they weren't using quite as heavily peated whiskey, like heavily peated malt at that time.
Yeah.
And it's a profile that I think is just phenomenal, and it's disappearing. So word to the wise, if you haven't had pre-2001 Ardmore, I think you should try it. And if it's up your alley, I think you should hunt those bottles. I know I am doing exactly that. And speaking of Kensington Wine Market, they do have their own Gordon MacPhail pre-2001 sherried Ardmore, which is very good. I haven't picked it up yet because it is $400. However, I think it's probably worth it. It's really freaking good. But there's much cheaper bottlings out there from pre-2001, 1996, 1997, and 2000 Ardmore.
I did buy that Kensington Wine Market Ardmore, but there's also this one, which I think was not that much. I think like 160, 180, something in that range. So it's out there for a decent price, and this is a 2000 vintage.
I was gonna guess that's the 2000 distillery label release. That's a great one.
Yeah.
I do have to say I tried to purchase that one and I was accidentally sent to the 27-year-old.
No. Oops. Well, that's a happy accident.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I'm gonna try and purchase that one again because I do hear that one's pretty good.
Yeah.
Back to who's the next Ardnamurchan. Lots of thoughts on these distilleries. These are some of the best examples out there, I think, of who's doing it right. I've seen a little bit of chatter on the chat box here, suggesting potentially like Holyrood, Harris. I think those two plus these are kind of the six that are really in my mind's eye. However, luckily, I've tried I think 8 expressions from them, and unfortunately, a corked 5-year-old from Lockley as well. The cast strength batch one didn't sit all that well with me, but I really loved their Our Barley release.
Yeah.
And that is their first true like core range whiskey, I do believe.
Yeah.
That Our Barley release was really well put together. I would happily add that bottle to my shelf, as I would their ex bourbon release. I think it was Sowing Season. I think Sowing Season was the ex bourbon. I really got on with those ones very well. They do have quite a lot of different expressions. It does get a little confusing for me to keep straight which one's fallow, which one's Sowing Season, which one's this or that or the other. Yeah, first. Yeah, exactly. But I think they're doing good stuff. The inclusion of a malting floor and them being a farm distillery, I think there's some really exciting things to come from them. Am I not mistaken? Did they win the best new distillery OSWA this year? Is that who picked up in Ardnamurchan's shadow? Or was it Rasse?
It was Rasse. I voted for
Okay.
Lockley, but it was Rasse who won.
It was Rasse. Yeah. Speaking of Rasse, I want to become more familiar with their products. The cast strength, I've heard great things. I'm really tempted by the Corcus Humboldti, the Chilean, I believe it's Chilean or Colombian oak cask.
Right.
Colombian oak cask. Really interesting things coming from them. I did enjoy the RO1 batch, the same one you enjoyed, Sheldon. And yet they're one of the few distilleries I don't have a bottle on my shelf from yet.
Yeah.
So I need to change that. Torveg, I've got their batch strength, which is absolutely sublime. It's up my alley as someone who's loved heavily peated and very distillate driven whiskeys. I think Torveg, the way their culture works with encouraging their distillery staff to make their own creations, to have a few weeks of the year where they get to kind of have run of the distillery and come up with something new. I think that's really interesting. And I think they're doing a lot of things the right way. And then we come to Ardnamurchan. Their inaugural is just a beautiful whiskey. It is a pretty whiskey. It does remind me of a more heavily peated Bowmore sometimes. That's kind of my love language. I love Bowmore. It's my dirty little secret. Independently bottled Bowmores I will throw money at. I who's the next one? Man,
that's a good question.
I didn't vote for Ardnamurchan in the OSWAs for best new distillery because at that time they only had 2 bottles of whiskey out. And I just couldn't go there quite yet. With their, I think it's Infinite Lock was their second release, and now they have some private casks coming out. I believe who I voted for at that time was Torveg because I've been really impressed by their alt glean, batch strength. I have a sample of the Knocknamoynia to pour as well. I think I voted for them. But going forward, I think the one that has the most potential to kind of reach the heights of Ardnamurchan is Ardnamurchan. They have the same backing of an independent baller. They have the distribution channels to get it all across the world very easily. I think it's going to get to a lot of markets. I think they did the right thing by waiting until it hits 5 years old. I think they have a stunning whiskey. It's really lovely. I think if they play their cards right, they could be the next one to follow in Ardnamurchan's footsteps.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you had to say, and maybe I'll have to break the bottle ban to pick up the Ardnamurchan and give it a try because everyone seems to be raving about it. Torveg, I've been really intrigued about as well. Their kind of whole program where they let their staff kind of run wild for a week and distill and barrel anything they want and sort of go nuts is interesting. And I've been tempted by their sherry one quite a few times, and hemmed and hawed and never went for it. So you have to tell me how it is, and then maybe that one will be bought up too.
Will do, man. Will do. All right, let's check in with the comments one more time, and then we'll kind of debrief these Ardnamurchans and then sign off for the day, as this is officially, I believe, our longest live stream ever, which makes sense. It's the first one with a guest. Checking in, Pete's got a vote for Ardnaho for to be the next Ardnamurchan. Obviously, we're a bit on the same wavelength there. I don't know if we have the same reasoning there, Pete, but yeah, I'd agree. Greg, good question. Haven't tried any Ardnaho yet, and some important ones are missing here. Isla Harris and Holyrood to start with. Yep, definitely considered Harris as well. I should be trying their new Oloroso Sherry Cask influenced release shortly here. Very much looking forward to that, as I did really enjoy the Herak. Did you try the Herak there, Sheldon?
No, it was a decent price. And again, it's sort of one of those things of not being able to pick up everything and having a cabinet that I'm running out of space to put stuff in. So, but it did intrigue me. It did look, and I've heard really good things about it.
Yeah, no, the first release that I got, the batch I got, and the way they did it, they had so many different batches going around the world. The batch I got was actually really nice. I got it on sale out of Alberta, so I got it at a really fair price. It was 150 when it launched here in BC. I think I got it sub $100 on sale in Alberta, and I'd buy a second bottle with that if I got through mine.
Good to know.
Greg, personally, I'll favor the ones that do not bury their distillate through wood technology. Yes, there is a rant in there, Greg. I would agree. Tim Laux just grabbed the Lockley cast strength yesterday, hoping it's good. No experience with Lockley yet. I will say that one of the members of One Nation Under Whiskey, Single Cask Nation, tried very hard to get the second batch of the Lockley cast strength. I'm wondering which batch you picked up, but he had a particular love of the batch 2, it sounded like. Let's see here. Any others? Some criticism for Harris's prices I've heard, and I can get that. I got the Herrick launch, and Oloroso should be about 40 pounds. Yeah, it did come in a bit higher. I will say that there was it came on at a premium price. Again, $150 in BC here, plus the 15% tax, so it's $172.50 to bring it home. That's too much for about 5-year-old whiskey for me. Brad Dean checking in. The only reason to buy Ardnaho at this point is to see what their distillate tastes like. No need for expectations. Yeah, I mean, and even if you came in with no expectations, I mean, you compare that Ardnaho to the Ardbeg Wee Beastie, I think you're gonna find that it's really top-notch quality stuff there. I'd actually, if I had a bottle of Wee Beastie still, I did drain mine emptied, but if I still had Wee Beastie, I'd do a side-by-side comparison of those two bottlings. Ardbeg's heavier, but the Ardnaho is prettier. And then Brad saying, I have the Gordon MacPhail 1997 Ardmore as well. It's quite good. Yeah, no, I'd agree. I cracked that about 2 weeks ago, and it was a beautiful Ardmore. Again, that pre-2001 distillate from Ardmore. It's really up my alley, I have to say. Speaking of up my alley, Ardnamurchan, really stunning today. Did a fantastic job. If we're going to close out this live stream with some final thoughts on Ardnamurchan here, Sheldon, what dram spoke to you today? Is there a winner, or is there a top two? What are your thoughts?
Good question. I mean, they're all good in their own way. They're all unique, which is, they're not two that are the same, right? They have a similar thread that runs through them, but they are all quite different. And I think that's what has made me buy so many of their releases, is that they're all so different, and they're all get such good reviews, and you buy one, you're like, oh yeah, that is good, I'll buy another one. I think for me, the Madeira cask still is a bit ahead. The pollen was good even after being open. This is our first thing, the first whiskey we opened, and it's still there 3 hours later. It's still bright and fresh and there. And I've added water to it, and it's still alive being 3 hours later. Good stuff. The sherry is open up a little bit too, kind of more pruny, raisiny now. And the Kensington Single Cask is definitely open up more kind of, I'm getting more like the grapey, yellow apple coming up a bit. And then on the empty glass is very interesting. I was getting, remember the sweet Band-Aid and the medicinal stuff. Now it's like barbecue chips and hickory sticks, and the peat is kind of coming into it, and sort of that chippy kind of flavor. So very interesting. So to pick my favorite, I'd probably have to go, and it's probably not that fair because the Kensington one has only been open for, you know, an hour, and we haven't had much time to spend with it or analyze it. But probably Madeira, Launois, sherry, and then the single cask Kensington. But that might change as I spend more time with it and actually give it some more thought and contemplation.
Absolutely. And that's what happens, right? We got to give all these whiskeys a fair chance. I mean, we made the decision to bottle crack this KWM Ardnamurchan live on the live stream, and that's not the fairest thing to do to the whiskey. However, it was a lot of fun. And I did like that we did that because it was fresh for both of us.
Definitely.
Really, really interesting. So remind me again, your first, second, and third. I know KWM was last. Was Madeira
so
first?
Madeira, Launois, sherry, and then the Kensington.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you for my number one. The Madeira, that bottle just slaps, man. That is a fantastic whiskey. It's right up my alley. There's a certain richness to it. The nose is alive with that fruiting, and you can feel that there's a bit more complexity to it when coming from the Paul Launois to that Madeira cask. I was really loving that. The Madeira shine today. It really did. I had a lot of different whiskeys on the table today, honestly. I poured a little bit of that cask strength 0222. I started off with just seasoning my palate with that blue barfly bottle from Aquavite. And if I'm thinking about bottles that stood out, Madeira is number one. I'm actually having a bit of trouble connecting with the Paul Launois a little bit.
Oh,
It's
really?
it's not suiting my palate as well as, let's say, the peat and sherry, or the Aquavite barfly bottling, or the KWM even, actually.
Okay.
I think there's a lot in there, but maybe I need to have it open a bit more. When I did just go back to it, because it was the last one I had anything remaining of in my glasses. I did get quite a lovely kind of like almost yeastiness and spice, and I got that pastry note again. It's really a whiskey that invites you to keep sipping on it. But I think today, for my palate, Madeira is number one. The KWM cask for me is number two. I'm in love with the nose, and the palate through the finish doesn't disappoint either. So I think this KWM has shone extremely bright for me. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this opens up in the bottle. And I'm glad I've got a backup of it, honestly. The Ardnamurchan Sherry Cask release is going to be my third of the planned four we had. And then the Paul Launois is actually last, which might go down to my personal suits and styles. It might just go down to this day too. If I wasn't a bit sick, this could also change. But the sherry cask release, I was jiving with that. I'd agree with Joel. It's absolutely it's a banger as well. To give a couple thoughts on a few of the other bottles here, the AD cask strength, I still prefer after tasting it today. I prefer the KWM cask. I prefer the AD standard release, the 012101 that I have here. It's a good whiskey, but I just don't find it as lovely and pretty as the AD 012101.
Interesting.
Great whiskey. Again, Ardnamurchan, we're degrees of good here, right?
Yeah.
And then this beautiful Ardnamurchan blue barfly bottle here. I took this bottle of salmon fishing with me on the Vedder River last year. That's when I first cracked it, and made some memories catching some coho and catching some salmon. Tried to take some pretty pictures of it and failed for Instagram. C'est la vie. I found it extremely tight at first. I found it tight and a bit hot. And we're a year on now. It's just getting down to that hydrometer on the side there. And I think oxygen is being quite kind to this now. If I had to include it in my ranking of whiskeys today, that Ardnamurchan Single Cask is probably in the 3-4 slot. I think it's not cracking, it's not beating out the Madeira, it's not beating out the KWM cask. It could give that Ardnamurchan Sherry Cask release a run for its money. So it is funny, this whiskey thing. It's a living thing, whether it's in cask and it's oxidizing and it's going through those barrel cycles through the seasons as it ages. Even in bottle, it is a living thing that does change and develop. And I really do love that I'm now falling back in love with this Blue Barfly bottle.
Nice. That's very, very interesting. I one thing to say, I really hope that Ardnamurchan has more Madeira casks in their warehouse, because they need to do another release of that, because it was excellent.
100%. Yeah, no, I'm here for it. If there's a Madeira cask that lands in Alberta once again, I am going full bore for that, for the whiskey FOMO. Final check in here in the chat. Tim confirms it's the batch 2 Lockley cask strength. Yeah, I think you're in good hands with that bottle. That should be a good introduction to Lockley. Going go ahead here. Watchman999, did he say I'm uglier in person than he thought I would be? I was very happy to share some drams with you on the Veta River there, Greg. And no comment. No comment. You're exactly what I thought you'd be, buddy. You're a great guy. Moving on. Peter White just ordered the Lakes Whiskey Maker number 7, hummed and hawed for the last week. Had to grab something on Black Friday. It is that time of year where we're just inundated with sales left, right, and center, and whiskey's no different. Glad you grabbed a bottle that hopefully will make you happy. The Lakes Whiskey Maker number 7. At Whiskey on the West Coast, it's one I had an eye on the most, so very disappointed it didn't land here. They said they'll do others, so they hope to see Madeira soon here. Yeah. If the Madeira comes in, definitely I'd say you're in good hands and grab that bottle. I know I'm going to grab it before I try it on this case. And then Greg, I guess the Paul Lamar is one of a kind, almost atypical AD, but I like it for its per se. Yeah, I mean, it definitely stands out amongst the other drams as a little bit different profile for me anyways. Smear Gel, I have to go to sleep. It's almost 1 a.m. here. Yeah, I know it would be pretty late there in Finland. Thank you for the live stream, everyone, and our hosts, of course. And that does bring me to our lovely co-host, Sheldon. Dude, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for not only the sample of the Madeira cast that won the night, but for taking the time for planning this with me. And for jumping on the live stream and hosting this with me. It's been fun, man. This is something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. I'm glad you're the first person I got to do it with. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad we could put it together. Thanks for doing all the homework. All I did was show up. You did all the slides and everything, so you put all the effort in. So I appreciate that. And yeah, it's been fantastic. Like I said, I've been a fan of your channel for a while. I'm glad we were able to connect and do something together. Hopefully it's not the last. We'll do some more, and hope I didn't bring down the quality of your great channel. I hope I contributed a little bit to you.
Not at all, man. Your whiskey notes, your tasting notes were they're on point, man. So well done. If you guys haven't already, make sure if you have an Instagram account, you jump over to Instagram, follow Noteworthy Whiskey. Again, great whiskey reviews, great stuff. Multiple posts every week, it seems, man. Like, again, you seem to post quite often, and I'm looking forward to finding out who wins your whiskey of the year for this year, Sheldon. So once again, give him a follow, and I appreciate you so much for joining me, as I appreciate everyone who's joined on the stream today here, guys. I appreciate all the support for you guys who are dramming along, who are commenting, who are sharing your opinions. Love it, guys. Thank you so much for supporting this little whiskey channel on the west coast of British Columbia here. From the west coast. Till next time, Slange.
Thanks again.